that Echo was, but it's not going to matter. Kirk on the flank finds it down onto one. Riot's already down, so it's a technical 1 versus 2. And Bri just swung to his death. Twizzler on the top floor will look to retrieve their teammate, but a Kirk can find the timing and clutch it out. An ace for Kirk.
But Spider still gets a kill, and then X are not ready for in the corner, but oh my goodness, he gets the kill anyways! He gets the kill, Teddy left alive. He does it yet again for Mirage! He's low on health, especially when the Vulcan canisters are in play, but now Ambi low as well, but he takes the kill anyways! He's still left, but with 15 seconds and not too much intel as to where they are, it's not looking great for him, but he's just got the isolated frag on aim key, and the last one's left in Freezer. This could be a very easy pick to find if he just looks in the right corners with the shotgun as well. He'll be lethal in the close range. A 1-on-2 for the Gridlock. Welcome back to Xenon Gaming Series. We're finally back with the very first day of the playoffs. It's time to get Season 7 wrapped up, and for the very first game of the day, it's a couple of teams looking to prove that they can compete with the very best in Tier 3, even Tier 2, as, you know, some teams that are mostly consisting of some players that might have missed out on Element in some of the bigger T3, T2 level events, like Restart, Element, things like that, really trying to prove that they can compete for the ones to come.
Yeah, those teams are going to be the UNC'S and Mormon Battalion. Both of these teams having very contrast overall, I guess you could say storylines. You can see Mormon Battalion inching their way third, beating out Fluffy Aimers in their very last matchup, forcing Fluffy Aimers to play that playing game that they eventually did win. And then translating over to Group B, you're going to be having the UNC'S on the other side of the table, who started out absolutely banging their matchups, beating both Aerial Arise and Karn & Co, even though Karn & Co did eventually make it through the play-in, just like Fluffy Aimers did. And we didn't really know exactly, not necessarily who the UNC'S were, but we didn't know the potential that they had, and they were eventually going to show us. And now they're all the way in the playoffs.
Yeah, it felt like a roster full of players that you'd seen around maybe in T3, T4, and you thought, they were going to be competitive, but I don't think anybody quite expected that, coming out on top of a group, or at least second to thrive over teams like Wildcard, Karn & Co, and Aerial Arise, who ended up not even making it. So a big statement for the UNC'S, and on the other side, like you said, Mormon Battalion, coming in with a similar kind of story. It's players that you've seen around, Exige, Exer, and Hectic and the gang. And you know that they're a good team, but it really feels like they have been outperforming some expectations by outperforming some teams that you would have slotted above them, namely Fluffy Aimers, who did again sneak their way into the playoffs. But still, this one's set to be very exciting, as it's two teams who both still feel like they have a good amount to prove, and hitting that top 4 would kind of make sure that everybody else knows that you're not just some team that had a gimmicky run in a group stage where you won 1 or 2 good maps for yourselves over teams that may beat you on normally good days for them, EO1 merchants, things like that. They could really prove it here today in the full best of 3.
Yeah, I talked about how the best of 1s were a chance for upsets, but in the best of 3, you really see what team has the deepest, whether it be in the overall, mentalities, the overall strats. The team and the players with the deepest bags will go the furthest, and I think this is probably one of the best testing grounds, especially if you're going to, in the future, potentially go up against teams like Makers. You're going to want to, really test yourself, find those gaps and mistakes before you play a team that's going to, expose them a lot more. But looking at our very first roster of the day, it's going to be the UNC'S.
Yeah, the UNC'S coming in with Zalaris, Scary, Millie, Sta, and Dead, a roster full of players who I had mentioned we've seen around one of the first seasons of anything I casted in Tier 3. Xenon back in Season 5 had Zalaris, Sta, and Dead on Native Gang. Or no, not Nitro Gang, I think it was. But whatever they were around way back then. They had a teammate named Native. That's what made me think of that. But still, they were around back then. They didn't have a great season, if I remember correctly. I think they got maybe 1 or 2 wins in the Swiss format. But the real highlight of this team hasn't actually been any of them or Millie's. It's been Scary, who has been having an incredibly good start to his season.
Yeah, not even incredible. He has the best entry stats, not only on his team, but throughout every single other player so far through the group stage. 25-8, 13-2 on attack, 12-6 on defense, and plus 17 overall with a 68% cost. He is not only their best player, but he essentially is that player, which we'll talk about and go through a little bit more later on. But now going on to our second roster, their opponents, we're going to have in Mormon Battalion losing their first 2 games, obviously against Fluffy Aimers and Makers. Those are 2 games that you should expect a team like this to lose to, but having the core of both One and Goon's main and academy with Exige, Exer, Cassia, Toaster, Eli. Again, we've talked about they have a lot to prove. They proved themselves all the way back, winning their last group stage game to send themselves here. But they're going to need a little bit more than that if they want to continue to have success.
Yeah, and a very good statement from them coming out of the group stage because of how well they played, being able to get that top 3 spot as a team that, a lot of people had high expectations for, at least the core of which, with that Exige, Exer, Eli, Toaster core. They don't have Hectic on board today, but still. It's a lot of players where you've seen them around in the past and they've played on squads together. Exige, Exer, and Toaster are all notably a part of that old Wanted Goons roster that made so many fans back in Element 2. But obviously, because of those reasons, you have high expectations for them, so it's a good thing that they were able to live up to that. And unlike in some seasons past, where since Element 2, some cores of Exige, Wanted Goons, Exige Exer rosters would maybe lose a couple of games where you would hoped they would have won it instead, given the prowess of them against the team they were playing against. In this one, you lose a game to Makers, you lose a game to Space Station Gaming Academy. 2 teams who are both firmly above you. Everybody else you were able to dispatch of, and today we'll see whether or not they're able to make yet another loss of the team they're playing up against and head to the top 4. But in terms of who's actually got the edge in this matchup, well, it seems like it's a tale of similar teams on both sides.
The main point I want to point out is both of these teams being in the top 2 in their cost and entry positions. Both teams having a 42 and 34 entry split for the UNC'S, and then a 42 and 28 entry split for Mormon Battalion. The difference, though, is for Mormon Battalion, the leading entry player, Exer, is 13 and 3, compared to Scary, who is 25 and 8. Which makes up more than half of their overall entry kills. So now you're probably wondering, what does this mean exactly? Well, in theory, if you are able to get rid of Scary and continue to shut him down in those entry picks, with the recovery rate being a 39%, in theory, that means if you can get rid of Scary, not having a great chance of another player being propped up to replace him in that entry position, you have at least a 61% chance to win that round.
I like that logic. I like that math. That works by me too. And you don't want to make it obviously the story of just one good player. And we don't mean to put down any of the other players when we say that. It's just given how good Scary has been. From my perspective, focused more so on the higher ends of T3 and Tier 2 because that's what's more relevant to me at the moment. I didn't really see any Scary gameplay until this season. I'd seen his name around, but I hadn't really seen him. And what a wonderful first impression he's made on everybody like myself who doesn't really delve deep into the depths of T4. I know you quite love some T4 Siege yourself, but it's still Scary making a massive first impact, and also deserves to be said as well how experienced so many members of his team are. Like I was saying, Native and Dead, or Zolaris and Dead rather, all having been around for over a year at this sort of T3 level, proving now that they can really step up and have big, great performances over other great teams. And Millie's as well, one of the oldest players in the T3 scene. He's been around for quite some time and proving that he can play pretty well, even still now. You imagine that sometimes, given how many players who are on the uptrend like Scary, some of these players who may be here, have been here for a long time, may start to trend downward, but not the case here at all. A very experienced roster with a lot of reps in T3, wanted to prove that they deserve their chance at a really, really good matchup and sort of to be considered more of a Tier 2 level team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We've seen it with teams like Fluffy Aimers, just really having that hardship of breaking through. But we actually got to see what maps we're going to be going to for this best of 3. The very first one to come out is Skyscraper, which Mormon Battalion, they've played it, I believe, 2 times, 8-6 against Outlast, 7-5 against Fluffy Aimers, and then we have Bank and Consulate. These are team or maps that both teams have already played before.
Yeah, Skybank and Consulate notably interesting because Mormon Battalion have played every single one of those maps. Coming into this game, they'd only played 4 maps at all, and they've only played 4 maps. After this game, no matter what happens, they will have only played 4 maps through the entire season. If they win, well, maybe next week. The only map, by the way, they have played all season that they aren't going to be tested on here is Cafe. Meanwhile, the UNC'S, you see maps like Labs and Clubhouse in their repertoire based on previous games. Those, the first 2 banned by Mormon Battalion, and then they banned Chalet right after, another map that the UNC'S have game day experience on. So you can see the strat and the idea, the general thought process for Mormon Battalion through these ban phase is let's take away the maps that the UNC'S have game day experience on and maybe try to play into the idea that we are so experienced playing at this level, you know, Exer, XGS, Toaster, having a lot of experience in T3 leagues, maybe just hoping that if they can get to maps that they're familiar with and make sure that their opponents aren't on maps that they're super familiar with on game day, then, well, it's perfectly fine. And it doesn't really matter that maybe you left out 1 or 2 of your own favorite maps in favor of making sure that your opponents are especially beatable on their worst maps. And that's something that I think XGS teams like to do a lot. I've talked to him personally about this strategy, and I really like it because a lot of the times T3 is just you pick your favorite maps and then you end up where you do. But he really tries to go deeper in with it and look more into what his opponents are weak on. And a number of other teams who also do this as well. So, you know, I'm not just trying to give the credit to him, but you can see clearly here that that was the idea with the maps that they took off the board. And we'll head to Skyscraper for the very first map of the Xenon Gaming Series Season 7 playoffs between Mormon Battalion and the UNC'S.
Yeah, this is a matchup where going into this, I think especially with the performance that the UNC'S had, a lot of people would say on paper that they should be favored. But not only after this ban phase, going through the, you know, overall stats, you know, talked about the entry stats, if XGS and Mormon Battalion are able to find a way to continue to read into the play style, the depths of what the UNC'S are doing in the series just past that map ban phase, if they can find a way, like I said, to shut down Scary, then it's going to force the UNC'S in a very uncomfortable position that they haven't really been put in before, which is just trying to find an alternative.
Thermite taken off of the board first, responded to right thereafter by Babbler Eli, living up to his name immediately, telling them that they don't even play Thermite because they think that his gun stinks. They'll take Azami and Montaigne off of the board. Monty and Azami, 2 very powerful operators on this map. Azami, namely, can completely change the way this site plays. If you've ever tried to walk into Drum or Terrace, or yeah, even like Drum, Terrace, especially Dragon or Shrine, while attacking a Karaoke T defense, with an Azami on the board, you know, and you can tell everybody that it's quite difficult to do. Monty also makes this map rough to defend. Valkyrie taken off of the board as well, so no extra info from the Valcams. And hopping into round number 1 looks to be a Karaoke T defense. No Azami on the board, though, so going to have to change the way they go about this and see any different ways they want to go for an extension. I thought we were going to pause there.
Oh, there we are.
No, I don't think that works.
It didn't.
I don't think that works. Oh, oof.
It does not.
Oof.
Oof. Yeah, that's a very unlucky way to start it.
Yeah, that's a rough one, really. That's kind of rough.
It is rough. But going into the actual operator bans, at first when I saw both a Thermite and a Monty being banned, I was like, this is going to be the definition of a defender-sided Skyscraper. And, you know, it is one of the most defender-sided maps. But then when I saw that Azami and the Valkyrie being banned out, it evened itself out. Obviously, it's still going to be playing completely to the side of the defenders. We're going to go to a quick break, though. We'll see you guys just in a little bit as we take this quick technical pause.
Well, let's try this again. Map number 1 of the Xenon Gaming Series Season 7 playoffs. The quarterfinal between the UNC'S and Mormon Battalion starts right now, and it starts on Skyscraper, and hopefully it actually starts this time. The UNC'S map selection, and, well, safe to say that, actually, it's not their map selection. That's wrong. I hate to tell the people, but they didn't pick that map.
No.
They picked Bank, which is our second map. This is Mormon Battalion's map selection, and the UNC'S are starting on defense as a result, because why would you ever pick attack start on Skyscraper? You wouldn't. That's just not a thing that happens.
Yeah, we talked about, in the pre-show, before we had to go to that tech pause, on how, like, with these operators' bans, they have somewhat evened each other out. So we're going to be going into a situation where, at first I did think, we're with those attacking bans, it was going to be just a little bit lopsided to the defense, more than usual, even with, Skyscraper being so defender-sided. But with that, it kind of evens out, and it lets these teams play their own game. And as you talked about, Mormon Battalion starting on that attack, talk about the entry stat, it's going to be even more important starting out this map. Like, keep in mind, last time they played this map was 7-5 against Fluffy Aimers. Even though it was without JJ, it was still a very valoranted effort. And Scary continuing to boost that stat up, getting the opening pick with Mira.
With Mira in house on a karaoke T defense. That should never happen, by the way. Exer on Ash, also the one who dies, not losing a ton of utility. However, still you're losing a good gun, and you're losing your entry fragger. So those entries going to be much more difficult to pull off into this kind of a defensive composition with Mira windows, so they have advantage in fights, and now no Ash to get rid of those Miras, notably enough. So the Mira windows are going to be annoying. The traps with Legion and Frost are going to be so annoying to get out of the way, because you don't have your same Ash. You could just run at the problem, so to say. And as a matter of fact, the UNC's so happy to get this man advantage that they're reinforcing the single wall into Drum, putting a Mira on it and just saying, you know what, we're going to force you to walk up on us. We're so confident in our ability to hold the site itself that we don't even want to bother with an extension. We don't want to risk possibly giving away another frag or two. And honestly, bold decision, not typical, but I do like it. As Mormon Battalion taking the space, but they didn't fully abandon the extension. Millies is going to die for it. Dead gets a trade back onto XGS, though, so it's still a one-man advantage for the defense.
Yeah, that's a very big opening, and the UNC's continuing to put themselves in a position to get these trade backs. That's what has made them such a defined team, and why they have an 86 or 84% conversion rate, is because even after they do get that opening pick, they don't give away too much map control. They make sure that they still put themselves in positions to get the trades. And as I say that, Toaster gets a shot onto Scary, shutting down that aggressive player early on, followed up by another.
Good kill there for Flaws. Able to get on the board for themselves as well. I think Exer's missing out on the game. Or no, Exer's still here, but regardless. Babbler, Eli able to get another one of these stun. Now it's just one player alone downstairs. Thanks to that C4 being chucked up, they know that he's down there. So it's just a matter of holding the restaurant stairs and waiting for the come up. Scary's opening pick goes completely wasted as the 4v3 turns into a 3v0 for Mormon Battalion.
And, I do believe that they did give a little bit too much respect after giving that opening kill. And Mormon Battalion is a team, if you give them too much map control, if you give them too much respect and allow them to really just have as much time as possible to plan and open those avenues onto the bomb site, really get all the intel from the drone economy possible on those last couple of defenders onto the site, they will use it to the maximum ability. Not exactly like how we saw that Canadian DZ, but they will take their time to really set up their actual execution. And if you don't put them in a situation where they have to deal with those obstacles early on outside of those extended positions around the map, it's going to put them in a very favorable position leading into the actual execution. So again, I really like that opening pick from Scary in that round. It's just continuing to play that very unorthodox, just really ratty play, just trying to find an opening in any possible position possible. But also on top of that, just the UNC's not doing a whole lot after it, not doing enough for me, rather, to give Mormon Battalion the obstacles. That's why we saw them win that very first round.
Yeah, it seems like that call to fall off the extension, at least towards Drum, didn't really end up getting relayed to Millies. Either that, or he thought the player on the Mira in Geisha was going to be able to watch for him, but I think that wall got opened up by Cassia, who is playing under the username Flaws tonight, and the ace charge that he put on the Geisha single wall from outside. So, regardless, Overextension got the trade back, and you like to see Mormon Battalion recognizing the space that they have available to them and just taking it as quickly as possible. And right now, recognizing that the main wall is soft, so why not open it up as soon as we can? They've got the buck repelled outside ventilation units, making sure that that wall gets fully opened up and already putting a decent amount of pressure on the site itself. But the main take from Mormon Battalion doesn't seem to be into this side of the map at all. It's a take of the extension on the other side that they're going to try and get rid of first. And Millie's with a run out seemingly to get Babbler Eli down off the board. Another opening pick for the UNC'S.
You continue to see these not necessarily isolated players, but players that don't have a whole lot of defending utility just really back up that two-man play. And that's why you see these plays not only have some success on the entry pick, but they go traded. Buck trying to get a little bit of a pick catching that player off guard, but it's simply not going to work. Sta also continuing to reside in this dragon position, really realizing that they need to waste a little bit more time, try to hold this extended map control right out of the site for a little bit longer compared to last time. Mormon Battalion, though, slowed down a little bit as Scary gets another.
ACOG on the Vector this time. Did it last round without the ACOG, even happier to have it now. Two-player advantage for the UNC'S, and yet again we see this opening pick for them, and then they just fall back to the site immediately. They don't want to give anything else up extra. Except this time around, Mormon Battalion a lot slower to take that space that they've been given because of all these active threats on their positions as they try to make their way forward. It's the Mira and her windows that are making this so difficult, with Zolaris on an angle into Terrace and the Mira windows looking towards both Terrace and Dragon. However, Toaster able to get the next kill onto Millies, so this execute could start to come in soon with these Dokkaebi calls, but for now, I think Mormon Battalion just waiting on one overextension, just one more before they start to make the play. But here comes the overextension, but it's not expected. Exige, with his back turned to Zolaris, is going to go down. Cassia and Toaster have to do it themselves, and only one kill for Toaster before it's him in a 1 versus 3. 14 health left on him, and not too much time to work with. The pistol for Scary will close it, and the UNC'S will get back their first round loss after the advantage, and take an advantage all the way this time.
We've talked about Scary so much, obviously we can go into, how good his entry stats are, but the reason he's able to get these entry picks, and a lot of times completely untraded, is because, again, he plays these unorthodox play styles, like perhaps maybe a Snake or a Mike W that we've seen on, other amateur Siege teams, where they can really get kills with whatever you give them. It doesn't matter the position, it doesn't matter the gun or operator they have, they'll always find a way to get those picks. And I've said this time and time again, when you have an entry player that is so good at their job, that lets everybody else on their team focus on what they need to do. You don't need to have a flex player, your second entry, come and try to compensate for that first entry player losing their life for a very dumb peak. Scary is a player, even though he takes a lot of those same dumb peaks, he wins them because he gets the timing right. His overall isolated singular IQ as a player is just so good, and that's why he's able to find these picks.
Maybe it's something about the all chat getting in their heads as well, because this guy has not stopped chatting since this game has started. And he dropped a 3K last round, so maybe that's the new tech. I don't know. Our producer, That Battery, would definitely agree. That guy all chats more than anybody I've ever played with, but still. The UNC'S moving back to Karaoke and Tea. The UNC'S moving back to Karaoke and Tea. And nobody heard us, so it sounds like we are losing our minds at the voices in our heads, which in a way we kind of are, because our producer likes to speak to us. Anyways, back to Karaoke and Tea for the UNC'S. They lost it last time. This time around, pretty similar setup. You still have the mute with the Mira windows, and you've got Scary this time on the Goyo with the ACOG, perhaps feeling himself after how well he played last round, and also just trying to play into some delay, because when you get that opening pick like you just did, and you probably end up falling back soon thereafter, like they consistently have been, well, the more delay you have later on with the Goyo canisters, the better.
The problem with losing these entry picks is, aside from Exige on this first floor, you haven't really gotten a whole lot of map control. You still have Toaster outside on this rappel, just hoping someone swings him, hoping that they give him an opening that he can take advantage of. Scary potentially almost going in there. But again, this is not a winning style of Siege, and we've talked about how a lot of rounds, especially on the attack, Mormon Battalion, they can play relatively very slow. Take their time to get as much intel as possible. Wait for the players to make a mistake. And speaking about a mistake, XGS finding Solaris overstepping his position.
Big mistake, and that's what Mormon Battalion were hoping on getting last round towards the end, was that overextension, and they're getting it again. Toaster able to catch dead this time, could possibly pick the case back up as well. One player still inside drums, with another on Restaurant Stairs and another one on Shrine, means that nobody actually inside this site itself. So Exige and Eli aren't going to have a ton to work with here in terms of the verticality, and Scary going to have a kill to work with after he takes down Exige. The Restaurant Stairs player has since vacated the position. Babbler Eli trying to walk up on him. Can't actually pop the Goyo though. Misses just a couple too many times. And now misses out on that opportunity to cut that rotate off. Scary takes his position back up, and it's a 3-on-3 with 45.
Yeah, it's just one of those decisions where you're forced to make it, and you can see Sta retaking this position upstairs. Again, Mormon Battalion, they've done so much work. They've tried and forced these defenders to rotate out of their positions, but they haven't gotten a lot of map control, and they're going to opt to go for a black side push with a player on single window.
Millie's in a really pivotal spot here. If he can prevent this entry from at least just one player, it leaves the other one isolated with his second player on the window. But that window's actually going to repel inside. It'll get shut down for it. And so too will Xer, as Millies is able to get that frag he needed to. Matter of fact, he doubles down. And Eli goes down with the rest of his team on that execute attempt. A good idea from Mormon Battalion, but the execute, well, they all just got executed. And the UNC'S get another one.
Again, that round, it was very confusing because it looked like Mormon Battalion had a plethora of ideas. They were trying to do so much, trying to attack the map from so many different points, to the point where it was a little bit too much. They were doing too much planning. They were kind of overcompensating for losing that player, and because the UNC'S didn't play into that first floor position, even with Exige getting that first, again, the capability for these players to really back their teammates up, always be doubled up. You're rarely going to find a player that is exposed, and in turn, they're able to work that pickback. Dwindle down this man count, you're never going to see 2 to 3 picks unless there's a huge mistake made by the UNC'S. And on defensive Skyscraper, there is little room to make mistakes. And again, just Mormon Battalion, they took a lot of relative map space, but it just wasn't a whole lot of useful map space at that.
Well, now they're attacking into a completely new bomb site, so maybe the taking of the space could be a little bit better. And normally that has been the difference maker in some of these rounds. You think back to last round where you were talking about it, they didn't do a great job taking some of that space away from the UNC'S, and they looked a lot more comfortable. Same kind of can be said in round number 2. Round number 1, though, very different. They lose that opener, and then it felt like a minute later, it wasn't Exer because he died first, but it was somebody, just kind of walked into drum right near the objective and took down Millies on the shield on Shrine. You think about that, what the big difference there is, and it's that ability to take that space actively. Kitchen Barbecue, a much harder site to defend though, so they may have that to play with themselves. And the Mozzie Pest hacked into to allow the Bravo drone to go even further forward, but Eli on kind of low HP to start the round.
I really love the answer back. We saw last time they did take a lot of map space, but it was map space that was completely empty. They didn't really try to push out any defenders out of their position, even though we're playing a little bit of a anchored defense. So this time around, they're bringing that IQ paired with a Dokkaebi, a Bravo, a Lion. They're trying to get as much intel as possible. On top of that, they're making Dead so uncomfortable. Opening that wall over by bottom black just puts him in a position where he has to react. He can't sit on his cam, and they're applying pressure so early on.
Really trying to get straight into the heart of the bomb site, and they've hit Dead. They've knocked him down, and the hacked Maestro cam is enough to get the finish. You love to see that. Trade back from Stub, but that's the first opener that Mormon Battalion have found through the game thus far. So even though it's even, they tend to be pretty confident in the late round. It's just...
I believe he is somewhat disconnected. He's told me about his overall internet before, but again, they're just right outside the cuffs of the bomb site. And here is an entry from Exige. He's found a way into the bomb site.
Exige trying to make his way right in. Starts to stick to plant too, and they know where this is, but Scary can't do anything about it. Even though he's on Solus, he just can't shoot back enough. Finally exposes his head to the holes, and Stud's gonna take the kill away from Scary. Good trade back though from Exer. to make it a 3 versus 3, and he's still on that window repel position, but they don't have anybody else to help here. They can just stick the defuse, and the walk down black is so perfectly timed that Zolaris is completely unharmed in the defuse attempt. And the question marks in the chat room because he had no idea what was going on, but it's pretty safe to say that the Mormon Battalion just did not notice the gap in that post plant.
Yeah, and the problem with that is because you didn't necessarily, they did try to put some pressure on that top floor, but because those top floor defenders never budged at their positions and continued to hold it, they kind of just gave up. Went for somewhat of an easy answer, realizing that bar was simply empty. There was an opening, and then XG was able to get that bomb site. But because you were never able to clear out that top bomb floor, not only were you able to kill the planter, but then you were essentially able to choke, retake the position, flank those attackers that tried to set up a relatively safe post plant without having that top floor. It was just kind of a recipe for disaster because you kind of just put them in a mousetrap where they had nowhere to move and no really avenue to get out of that position either. So you just had a player stuck on window, not a whole lot he could have done to support his teammates. And again, it's just the UNC'S. They realize the space that they're leaving open. Every single map or point of the map that Mormon Battalion is taken is left open on purpose from the UNC'S.
And they recognize how quick Mormon Battalion are to take some of that seemingly open space since round number 1. And they've consistently been bringing that Mira to enable them to punish Mormon Battalion for trying to take some of that space near the objective. You got a Mira window set up with a breakable wall next to it. If anybody walks into your line of sight, that should be a free kill. And Mormon Battalion are trying to just walk at it and solve the problem. Hasn't been working super well thus far. It looks like more of a site setup itself, at least to start off this round. Mira window yet to be put down, but once it is, eggs are going to completely ruin it. And that is going to be the shortest lifespan of a Mira window maybe ever. It took about 2 or 3 seconds for that one to go down. And the other one placed on mezzanine. So this round, if Mormon Battalion can take some of that karaoke T control, it'll probably be easier to push into Dragon and Terrace than it was last round because of the difference in the places the Miras were put, or at least I think they were put in different spots this time.
Yeah, you know, just working that site a little bit earlier is going to give them a benefit of the doubt, but because it was set up so late, you can see that the UNC'S, they had a lot more emphasis on trying to hold this extension over by what a lot of people would call the iron curtain of the map, what completely cuts off. But with that Ash charge going out, that is all of that control over in that middle part by Drums gone. It's just completely cleared out. Going to be pushing that Cade all the way to Dragon, and as soon as they get this info, they're going to realize that they have this map control. They have a minute 30, that plenty of time to play with. That wall softened up just a little bit. This is the best that Mormon Battalion have looked translating after a mid-round.
And I think the big thing to point out here is that not only are Mormon Battalion normally better with more time, it's that the UNC'S struggle when they don't have a lot of time, when they have too much time on their hands. You can see it in some of these rounds, the way they have advantages, and then it just starts to be given up, not because Mormon Battalion are necessarily pushing them out of their positions, but because they're kind of overextending. Overextension almost caught by XG, but in this case, he's just going to rappel straight in and kill the man who dealt with him last time. Big frag on his Ilaris, because that's going to take away that big impact position right behind the bar. Trade back, though, in from dead, and he's going to try and retake some of that forward position, but he's looked at from Drum, and he just has no idea. Good trade back again, though, from Sta, but another trade for Cassia. Makes it another advantage, and here comes Eli in a position he won't be expected. Shotgun out, but he can't quite get through. It's okay, because he'll start to make his way forward without too much of an audio cue, and Millies and Sta are lined up right next to him. So if he walks up these house stairs, he could easily just have his way with the defense, but Sta has his way with flaws. Default cam not shot, though. So Labler Eli's position is understood. Eggs are the only one who can really stop this post plan at the moment. Eli still needs to get into a good position, but while he's trying to get down there, Egger is dead. And so from on top of the mini office desk, or from on top of the island, there's nothing they can do. Well, what a long arm that is. Long's arm's longer than Wemby with that long arm. And Sta somehow able to get it done on top of the table.
He thought he was Kevin Durant, but he turned into Bobo in that situation. That's 2 back-to-back rounds where Mormon Battalion...
The basketball references are unleashed. I let Goose off the leash, guys. I'm sorry.
But it was 2 rounds back-to-back where Mormon Battalion were able to get a plant off that they thought was safe, that they thought they had a good post plant, but there was a gap. A huge gap that they didn't see that time around just simply was diffusing the bomb on top of the table. But again, the fact that the Unks really allow for this space to be taken from Moment Town, they start to fall back, go for the retake, and again, just really smushing this entire post-plant defense together to the point where they don't have anywhere to room. Now, on the contrary, the Unks made a lot of the exact same decisions last time in the round. Example, you saw that mirror over by Minibar. They knew exactly that player was going to be there, and there are semblances that Mormon Battalion are reading into. If the Unks are able to continue to shut down and change up their overall game plan, changing up, speaking of Stub bringing out that clash, it's going to make it even more difficult for Mormon Battalion.
And the Clash pick, along with Morgoyo, along with Kaid, and the Mute, all of it just designed to slow this team down. They're not trying to overextend. They're not changing up the boundaries of what they're holding. They're just trying to make sure that Mormon Battalion have an even harder time taking it than they did the last time around. And then they did making it harder than that time. Over and over, and it's just compounding on itself. But Mormon Battalion with a nice adjustment. I like this because the way they've been trying to go about it hasn't necessarily been effective. So now you're bringing a Finca, you're bringing a Fuse. You generally have along with the Ying, a composition that's designed to try and hit the heart of the bomb site, but notably push the defenders out of the positions they're sitting in, with those Candelas coming through, and with the attackers running at you with that Finca boost, with the dope call going off. It's so hard to feel confident playing where you stand.
The problem for Mormon Battalion is they simply have to get these walls open. They have to get into the bomb site. That little can opener is going to get that single wall over and Geisha open, and a nice shot from Eli. But the problem is, here's the clash. Scary answers back on top of it, and we're starting to see this gap being shut down.
Oh no, and Millie's going to shut down two players on the balcony. At least Flaws from the rappel is able to get one. That's Cassia, rather, still outside on that rappel. Run out from Stud just to finish off Toaster and make sure there's no chance at bringing, more like a walkout, really. But still make sure there's no chance at bringing these back to even, other than by killing some of the remaining members. And, well, two very scary guns on the other side, and Zolaris, but according to him, he should have like 5 kills by now. So, should be 3 scary guns to go up against. And as Flaws still sits on the window, Cassia trying to bait out for XGS, who needs to take some forward progress. Good drone info, getting info on the player inside of drums. That's scary, and that's a particularly important player to kill. But so far, kind of just working on his own with his entry. XGS just worked his way to the other side of the Geisha hallway, though. Will this be expected by Scary? It seems to be at least a thought that he has. The Grim Beads are going to give away where Zolaris is, though, and that actually facilitates a jump into the site from Cassia. Down to 5 health is Scary, but XG's teammate has died, so missing out on that kill going to prove to be crucial, as now he's in a 1 versus 3, and one of those 3 is the Clash. Very tough situation to work your way out of, especially with no case control, and especially with both of those defenders just so far away. Zolaris swinging into the holes being shot in the floor, just because he doesn't want to go too long without getting more than just 1 kill. He did get that kill in this round, but not likely the XGS will get too many more. The Clash just being a nuisance here, and the wide swing from Scary actually knocked down, but the C4 are going to be enough to make sure that it happens. Never mind, Scary was still on his feet, Zolaris knocked down, and it almost got a little odd, but instead, 5 to 1/2 for the Unks.
A very just uncomfortable position for Mormon Battalion. Going into this matchup, if you take a team as your map picked a skyscraper, you go in knowing that they're going to choose the defense first, especially with going back to the default 6-6 system. You have to have a great idea. You have to have a great strategy for the attack. It is run of the mill to get a 4-2 half, but a lot of the times, problems we see when teams bring themselves purposely to such defender-sided maps, like perhaps a skyscraper or a consulate, is that they simply can't get more than 1 attack. And even though they are able to translate over to the defense, that only 2-round buffer for their opponents on the attack now, especially with a team like Uncs that is so incredibly aggressive with players in the front of the battlefield like Scary, the attack won't be as much of a problem. And I don't want to necessarily say this was a mistake from XGS bringing his team to this map, but I think they really did underestimate the overall potential of that extended hold that the Unks were able to put up on their defense.
Well, now Mormon Battalion. That name has been so difficult for me to say today, and I just don't know why. Mormon Battalion will get their chance to the defensive side, and that is especially important. Since round 1, which they won, they've lost 5 in a row, and Sky is a rough map to attack. But that is an especially bad half, all things considered. So now this take from the UNC'S, from the opposite side over. Set to start off pretty well. Was the feed lagging for you too, or was it just me?
It was.
Okay,
No,
gotcha.
okay.
Because my college Wi-Fi has been acting up a little tonight, so I need to make sure I'm not losing my mind. But anyways, 5-on-5 still is not too much progress yet to be made by the attack. And the site setup itself, not really too prominent. Is unlike what the UNC'S did, where they set up that so-called Iron Curtain, as you would put it. Mormon Battalion are trying to get really aggressive and make sure that it is difficult for the UNC'S to get into the building at all, threatening runouts and meeting them at the complete opposite side of the second floor.
I really love this idea, this strategies theory that they're trying to bring, is because they understand that the UNC'S are going to be so uber aggressive, especially in this early round, and they want to make sure not only are they able to meet those entry players at the entry points around the map, but also they want to apply so much pressure that these entry players really just say to themselves, it's not really worth it for me to swing this angle. For example, it's not really worth it to swing that double window or try to swing over by this extension into T, and it's just a really difficult situation. You can see after losing the entry pick, they completely have just changed up their entire push.
And in a very concerning way as well. They're only now walking into the first floor in delivery with with about half the round to go. In the last 15 seconds, they've made progress all the way up to office and exhibition. But that was control that was being given away to them because Mormon Battalion are content with the amount of time they've wasted and the amount of control that they still have, confident that the UNC'S can't push them out of their positions, and Scary, try as he might, not going to be able to, as it's a 2-player advantage now for Mormon Battalion. Sta able to get the next kill into XGS, possibly slide over extension, and that's the kill back that they were looking for, the UNC'S, but they still don't even have proper control of either Drum or Shrine, and so they have a lot to make up for in the last 40 seconds of this round.
It's just a very difficult time, but Millies is able to find one again. This trade back, this defense that's been set up is just completely crushing out these last couple of attackers.
The advance forward not quite caught yet. Sta in Drums and Dead still sat in Shrine. Two opposite sides of the map to one another, and I don't know if they're going to be expecting Exer in this corner. Incendiary bolts might do a good job of isolating that fight onto the Legion, but not quite an entry happening just yet. Dead still waiting, and Sta not going to be able to do anything. Pre-fire not even able to get the kill, and Exer will shut it down. Dead goes, and it's a second round for Mormon Battalion, seemingly better fortunes on the defense.
That was a very convincing round. It just, the entirety of that round from start to finish, Mormon Battalion were always in the driver's seat. And sure, they're still looking down that 2-5 deficit, which is a very tall hill to climb. But if they can continue to have those success and continue to bring these operators, like we saw last time, both Legion and Maluzi, that are trap operators, that their main goal is to stop and slow down these very aggressive players that overextend, and now bringing a Fenrir, I think they're still going to continue to throw off these players. But if the UNC'S are able to eventually read into the defense, because this is eventually, it's going to happen. We've seen it happen. That's why they had so much success on their group stage run. But if they're able to work their way around, and Mormon Battalion don't start to change up their overall defense and start to fall into those same habits, that's when you're going to see the kind of like the tides turn back to the UNC'S. But so far, especially going into this round, I think Mormon Battalion are still going to have such a strong chance to continue to be in that driver's seat.
Well, now they get to move on to their second defensive site, that being Exhibition and Office. Blitz being ran by Sta, and I like that decision. We saw Mormon Battalion tease it in their last round. Oh, that's not really the most effective C4. They literally saw where you were, but still, doesn't end up losing anything for it, so I guess it's fair enough. He got back before it was a big problem. But yeah, I like the blitz pick. It can be very hard to push some of these defenders out of where they sit, so if you bring a blitz, you run right at him. Now that can get a little better, but it just got a whole lot worse. Your top frag, you're tied for top frag, I will say, but still. Scary, who's been so good all season long, already dead. Good job at least to get the VIP wall open. You're still working from a man disadvantage, though. Let's see if they can isolate XGS, though, here, because that could be very influential.
XGS continue to put themselves in these very hot positions right outside of the bomb site.
Oh, no!
No, he just missed the shots. That could have been an absolute huge opening pick. Zolors didn't even take a hit of damage.
Nope.
And they're going to escape with their lives, just as Scary said. You gotta start praying to God for that situation.
Grimby is on the run out for Eli to make sure that he can't quite shut down the buck play. And even still, didn't look like Zolaris was in a spot where he was necessarily a risk. Still wanted to go for it anyways, but the ping on the player downstairs there, and Cassia is down for the count. Not sure why the Fenrir would be there of all operators. Nice try, but overextending a player like that, very isolated. Big mistake for Mormon Battalion, because you had the man advantage, but now you're giving the Unks a way back in. And with that blitz on the attacking side and so much utility to execute around, I don't think they're going to let you really not regret that decision later on.
Yeah, on top of that, just so much utility coming from this Grim. This Grim has just stopped Eli from running out. And it's Zoloris reading that. I'm not exactly sure how Eli didn't read into that, but now an opening, an advantage for Mormon Battalion.
Toaster just going to re-up that same position, though, as he knew Eli had something cooking, and they're not going to use even more Grimbies. If they're not already out, they're just not going to expect anyone to be there, but Toaster only able to get one, and now he's getting ran at by a blitz. It's over, chalked around. The Unks are on match point on the map selection of Mormon Battalion, and they need 4 rounds in a row to make that not the case.
Again, I talked about how it was simply an eventual situation that the Unks were going to find a way to play around this heavy trap utility bomb site. And to be fair, though, that wasn't from the succession of the Unks. There was a lot of questionable plays, especially isolated singular decisions from players rather. For example, Flaws just playing down below, being pinged right there. That's just not only a situation where you shouldn't die, but you shouldn't even be there. And then on top of that, you had Eli just completely turning him back, knowing for a fact that they knew exactly where he was. I'm not sure exactly if he just overread his situation, wasn't aware that there wasn't a crossfire setup, but there's just a lot of questionable plays. And I do like that Mormon Battalion are going to say to themselves that we just simply had an overall great site setup. We just didn't play it to the best of its abilities.
Can you really blame them, though? Because it's like, you have a good site setup and then Blitz runs into it, and that's normally a pretty solid counter to having a good site setup. So I kind of understand if they knew the Blitz was on the board, why they felt like they had to get so consistently aggressive, why they may have felt like they needed to make it so hard on the Unks to get into the building. But they're playing a much more risky style of the game. Round 1, they were trying to play the Office XC side and extend as far over. Is that 2 mute jammers on 1 run out? Oh no, that's okay.
All right.
I thought he put 2 mute jammers literally right next to each other, but
It's
instead,
bugged too.
oh, that's rough.
Oh,
And the
that
wall
is-
already opened. Never mind. Scary's head taken off. Doesn't matter.
Oh my god, that is back-to-back rounds that Scary's just been absolutely dealt with. Just no chance of a refrag. And to be fair, though, that is just one of those situations where he puts himself in a relatively bad situation. But the Mira, it's still able to reside in that position, even though it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So Loris is continuing to play in the exact same double door that he was trying to push over last round over by Laundry, but this time you're not going to have Cassia roaming here, so it's going to give them a little bit less of a chance. But again, the Unks not even entertaining the idea to push over by Geisha.
Not at all, and good on Mormon Battalion just to not really overdo it. Last time around, it felt like they had this extension towards Terrace, and then Cassia eventually got tired of playing over there, wanted to get a little too active, dealing with their own game, but instead it's XGS this time, who's basically playing in a death spot, so basically nothing to lose from it. Trying to get active once more. Eggs are able to get another one into Millies, and thanks to the Mute Jammer and Kaid combo, the VIP wall took so long to open up that everybody but Dead died in the process, or in the time it took, rather, to get that wall opened. Exer takes down 2 as they try to just jump in Samurai window, but it's all for naught. And Mormon Battalion not quite dead yet.
It really goes to show that trusting the idea that you have for a site, trusting your IGL, that being Exige, can not only lead to success, but a complete flawless round. And it really goes back to just simply Mormon Battalion, their roamers not overextending, and even their anchors also not overextending, not giving too much map control, not giving too much respect to the UNCs. And that's why they had so much success. And the UNCs now are going to be coming into a problem that they didn't really have to deal with before. And on top of that, Mormon Battalion, they're going to be able to go back to this bomb site and potentially replicate the success they had last time. And I think this is kind of a situation, if you're a Mormon Battalion, you finally found that recipe for success. You know exactly how and where you need to counter, what points of the round you need to counter. You understand that you need to be very aggressive in that early round to potentially stop an early push or an early entry player, for example, Scary. But also you need to understand that they do realize exactly when to push back.
Now Mormon Battalion going to try and go back to Karaoke and T. They were successful on this the first time around, even if they get this round win though. Still need 2 more. We still need to see a full site rotation of everything they have in their back pocket. Just to even sneak this out to overtime, and again, it's on their own map pick. And we kind of touched on it, but this is the risk that comes with picking a map like Skyscraper. It's very hard to attack, and you know they're not going to let you have that attacking side first, especially not in 6-6. As it's just too much risk to justify going to the attacking side first. And so there's a chance that you end up down this much like Mormon Battalion are, but XGS is going to shut down Zolaris really early on to start off round number 10. And again, it just feels like whoever's on defense is so drastically favored in those first engagements.
It really is. And the continued lapse of success from Scary not being able to find any picks whatsoever in the second half of the map has really shown to give difficulties to the UNCs. They haven't, as I said in the pre-show, really propped up that, forefront, execution player that's able to shut down those entry picks. You can see Flaws just residing over in this roam over by offices, but there's not even really anyone here. This main overall push is centered from just really choking from below, having one player on that window and then one on balcony, just trying to choke out this position so they can hopefully get this bomb down on to this Karaoke position. But that reinforced walls did give them so much difficulties.
XGS giving him difficulties in Geisha as well, lowered to 17 health, but still there. Still holding on and still being an active problem for the attack to try and push into. Giving comms to his teammates as well, that Geisha seems to be a hot spot for the attack. And Sta repelled over there, but not quite trying to make the play yet. Seems to be a generally spread out attack with one towards top black, another one on the black balcony, or on the balcony about to walk in towards top black from the opposite side, that being dead, and then now 2 on the main repel with the bees up there, imagining that it'll give them the ability to walk in without getting punished for it. But XGS is right here, and he's about to punish every single person who tries to repel in. Stun knocked down, and that's the case player. So that is a big problem. Caught by the Grim Bees, but just fades away, and Toaster eventually able to get this C4 kill in a millies. Good trade there from Dead and Scary getting it back. But because Stud's still down, Dead effectively in a 1 versus 3 against Eli, Exer, and Cassia. Without much control, without really much idea of what he could possibly do here to make it better. Wall into Karaoke, definitely not accessible. His teammate going to be too hard to pick up in 15 seconds, not really being given those active fights. And through the wall, it's Exer, given the perfect information on his position.
Yeah, that
was perfectly.
Yeah, that was a very difficult round for the UNCs because simply they didn't have any success on any other points around the map. They had complete control of that first floor, even though they did lose the entry pick. They were able to still get that control, work some of the vertical over by that cross hallway between Geisha and Karaoke. But because they never cleared it out and went for that very two-dimensional push onto Karaoke, your entire win factor was XGS not being able to swing you. And guess what happened? XGS swung and downed that planter, completely disabling the entire objective of that round, that last 40 seconds being the diffuser. And on top of that, looking at the bigger picture, your main entry player that I keep in mind I talked about has more than half of your entry picks with a 32% recovery rate if you lose an entry pick, has continued to die first every single attacking round but one.
Major issue for some of these last rounds, and it really does at some points just feel like it is a difference of Well, you're attacking Skyscraper. Sometimes it's just really, really difficult. I do feel like we've seen a lot of attempts on part of the UNC'S to just go straight at the site. Both of the times they attacked Exhibition and Office, and then last round as well when they were attacking Karaoke and T, we've seen a lot of direct take attempts. They tried once early on to shut down a roam game from Mormon Battalion. It went pretty poorly as they didn't really have any control until about halfway through the round when they were just starting to take some control that really didn't make a difference. But still, you would have imagined that, you know, by this point, maybe we start to focus more on varying it up because it feels like maybe they're getting a little bit predictable in terms of where they're going to go about attacking the site from. And that can kind of start to make it a little bit hard for you to find any success on the attack if the defenders kind of know what's coming. And it feels like we have seen Mormon Battalion maybe get a little closer and closer to the bomb site itself so as to not leave the gaps open in the objective. They had a lot of gaps open on their post plant, so they want to make sure they don't get caught because it's very clear that when UNC'S spot a gap, they try to hit it, but, well, so far, Mormon Battalion doing a good job at fooling them into thinking there are even any gaps when in reality they're all right there, but maybe that just means it's time for the UNC'S to try and go for another full clear, perhaps.
Yeah, and it really goes back to the idea that we brought that Mormon Battalion, XGS more specifically, brought them to this map specifically, not only because they simply, we beat Fluffy Aimers who went all the way to SSG, but they liked not only how they played it on attack, they literally probably overestimated it a little bit, but translated over the defense. In my opinion, I think the overall sites, especially the extensions away from sites, is just simply better from Mormon Battalion than we saw from the UNC'S. The problem now, though, is if you're looking at Mormon Battalion, aside from this site, they've kind of flip-flopped between the two sites, and this gives the UNC'S a great overall idea of what Mormon Battalion are doing as a whole on the defense. Obviously, it's going to change site between site, but the overall idea, the overall theory behind what Mormon Battalion is trying to do on this defense will reside. You'll see semblance of it in every single site, and now that the UNC'S have had all the rounds, even losing 2 of them, they now have the opportunity and all the information to potentially shut this match out on 6-7 or 7-4 rather, and that's the difficulty of being down 4 rounds.
It really is, and you can have the best defense as possible planned, but being that one round or being only 1 round into the game, or being 6 rounds into the game only having 1 round, it makes it so you basically have no room for error. They get one really nice blitz push onto a defense, and all of a sudden you have no more room to make any kind of mistakes. If Scary has a big round like we know he can, Stun and Millies have been stepping up a lot this game as well. If we see too much success that you weren't quite ready for, if one player just has a hero round from this point on, then it's over. And the UNC'S have moved on to their own map selection in pretty solid standing, all things considered. Top floor hold already getting dissected here by the UNC'S as Mormon Battalion being forced to push for a move further and further away, but the plane to Dragon not expected, and there's that opener that we talked about so often going to the defenders, going the way of the attackers this time.
Yeah, that was not only a very big opening pick, but a very questionable swing from Eli, realizing that there was a potential flank over by Offices, but having absolutely no intel, purely going off of his own senses and the sound call. And on top of that, the complete top floor is in control essentially from the UNC'S. There's one player all the way over inside of T. Flaws is able to get a flank, though, onto Millies. Wow. It's a great shutdown, but they've identified that this mute is up here. They simply just need to get their players over and shut him down, and then eventually also deal with Exige, which most likely will drop down that hatch.
Nice shot from Stull, and I was about to say they were relying on Millies to make that forward progress because nobody else inside the building just yet except for Stull. But it is the Maverick to start to bring things back a little bit. Scary's also made his way into toilet, and Zolar is into restaurant. So,
he's gone again.
Looks like we might be. Oh, I'm back. Sorry. It looks like we might be seeing a little bit more of a direct take here, given where they are. Scary going to get 1 kill into Flaws, but Exer trades it back. You need to find this kill upstairs, but he won't, and neither one of the remaining players on Mormon Battalion will live past those few seconds. Shut down by the UNC'S in their second attacking round win. Nets them the entire first map.
I think going into that overall matchup, again, I talked about, I think they just underestimated not only the Unks, but overestimated their own game plan. Because again, all you need to do as soon as you get that 5-1 scoreline on the defense is win 2 rounds. And the great thing about winning 2 rounds is there is so much room to have failure. And in turn, what you get from failure is learning from your mistakes, finding out the gaps, seeing exactly what Mormon Battalion were doing. And that round was just excellence of gap spotting, just finding those isolated roamers on the top floor, punishing them for being over aggressive, residing in their positions for too long. And on top of that, even though Scary was shut down, you had Millies showing up absolutely big in that entry and kill department to back him up.
And after that big win on Skyscraper, how well they played, you would have thought it was the map they wanted to go to the most, but that's actually the one map that we haven't seen them on yet all season long. The Unks go into familiar territory for map number 2 in Bank, and Consulate, if we get there, also familiar territory for them. So every reason to believe they might make it work in the best of 3 to send themselves to the semifinals. Whether or not they'll get it done, though, still remains to be seen, so make sure you stay right here through the break, as we'll come back with some more Xenon Gaming Series Season 7 playoff action. Welcome back to map number 2, fresh off of Skyscraper, the map pick of Mormon Battalion that really didn't look like it as the map started to play out. 7-4 in favor of the UNC'S, with Sta stepping up big time. Scary struggling a little bit on some of those entries like we talked about with Zolaris, struggling as well, but other than the entry KDs, everything else in the mid-round, in the late round, was going the way of the UNC'S.
I really think, obviously it wasn't the reason they won, but the fact that a player like Millie's backed up by Dead simply just getting that one entry pick gave room for them to just simply make mistakes. Give them room, give them enough time to read that defense when they were on an attack to eventually successfully close it out. And that was a success on, you know, I guess you could say compensating for Scary having a little bit of difficulties that we didn't see previously. And now we're going to a map that's surely it's their pick. Last time they went there, they did lose 8-7, which essentially is a toss-up. They could have won it. Mormon Battalion also played it, winning at 7-5. So both teams going really to the maximum distance. So again, this is one of those maps where on paper it could be a toss-up. But I really just do think if the UNC'S continue to have the success on reading into what Mormon Battalion are doing, I think they could close it out here.
I'd have to agree, honestly. The UNC'S looking really good in that first map, going to a map that they chose to pick into. However, we'll say Mormon Battalion could possibly do what the UNC'S just did there, starting off on a side that you're a little bit more confident on a map that you've also shown a lot of skill on and that you've shown you can be quite competitive on in Bank. Like you said, they won it 7-5 or 7-4, or 7-5 that you said. But yeah. Anyways, a map that they've won before, where you get to pick the side that you start on. Just goes to show that although you may have lost your map pick, the artistry of this map ban phase of banning out a bunch of maps that the other team is comfortable playing on game day and getting to have your pick, or forcing them to pick from a few maps that you're comfortable with, kind of shows that, you know, instead of just, well, preventing them from choosing the maps that you don't want them to go to, you made sure that the whole map ban was filled with maps that you could take any two of. And so now moving into Bank, you really need to get that first map on the board. Otherwise, it's the UNC'S moving to the playoffs 2-0, and Brava taking off of the board. A little bit interesting. Still see some ban, but after how much we saw her last map, makes sense that we'd want to get rid of her.
Yeah, again, it really goes back to just trying to take as much intel away from Mormon Battalion, trying to put them in the dark as much as possible. Then again, being backed up by that Valkyrie ban. And it is really curious. I don't want to go too ahead of ourselves, say that, you know, if the UNC'S win 2-0 here. But keep in mind, this is a map pool that favors Mormon Battalion. I went into this matchup thinking that their small map pool of only playing 4 maps was going to cost them maybe even an entire series, but teams continue to play into their actual map pool. And so it's simply not a problem. And I also think, on the contrary, there's plenty of homework that the UNC'S have had to study to really read in to what Mormon Battalion are trying to bring. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that here, especially coming off of the first map of Skyscraper.
Get to start on the side they prefer as well, and they're already bringing a Tubarão and a Clash into the picture. Combine that with the Warden and the Jaeger, and it looks like this is just going to be a matter of holding the basement, trying to make sure it's hard for them to get into server, trying to delay them no matter where they try and get into, and then delaying them, trying to open the hatches, trying to, again, break into server, and making sure that no matter what they do, it's being done slowly. No Goyo is being brought. Honestly, valid decision, because with both Mira and Goyo on the board, you can assume they're going to bring a Twitch, so you don't want to bring either of them just to make sure that they're not able to counter you perfectly. Nobody on this defensive lineup really gets super countered by the Twitch, other than maybe Eli on Jaeger. But I like that thought process from Mormon Battalion, given how they're walking into this round. And so, we walk into round number 1 and see how the UNC'S are going to manage to walk into this defensive setup. Notably, only a Thermite being brought, along with 4 Heartbreach charges. So, I'm interested to see how that's going to get used.
I'm also very interested to see if Sta has brought, you know, that combo of the can opener and the secondary EMP charge. And you see this probably be the most used kit from the new recruit rework on attack time and time after again, because you can simply get hatches all on your own, removing essentially 30 seconds to a minute of time wasted that would take 2 to 3 other people trying to get a hatch open. And on top of that, if you look at this first floor, There's not one defender up here. It's just so much time.
Actually, Exer is on the first floor of the main stairway.
Second floor. I apologize.
He's back downstairs though, so you were right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that is true. Nobody on the second floor. Definitely nobody on the first floor either. Zoto canister popped a little bit late from Toaster, but otherwise pretty much unperturbed in getting these hatches open. CC hatch already basically open. Once the Goyo canisters or Zoto canisters are all used up, it will be opened eventually. And only so much delay there, so I love how quickly the UNC'S are able to take that map control and then start to work their way towards this site itself. Flaw's moving his way back from CC, back from server, all the way back towards gold, and more so the site itself. But with all these hatches open already and all this pressure placed on the bomb site, some of the delay towards the site itself, including the clash in server, the only one left on that side of the map, is going to need to be lethal for this defense.
Yeah, this position of XGS is just pretty much dire. This is, I wouldn't necessarily say the win factor for Mormon Battalion, but he's in a position where this essentially makes the UNC'S make a decision if they want to try to go for a push over by Vault. Mills gets one onto Eli, or if they want to deal with him. And it looks like they're going to be going to one over by Vault!
Oh no, Zolaris the instant he tries to drop the hatch, blown sky high, but dead, able to line up two more right after. Good trade back from Exer, but Exer the only one who can do anything. Clean shot in his star though. So he leaves himself in a position that's possibly comebackable. Two players on the other side, very low on HP, but they need to play off of one another. They are doing just that, trying to make sure the timings line up, but he just barely misses Millies, and Millies won't let him get away with a miss that slight. As slight as it was, Millies not slighted by it, not affected at all, and he'll still take it.
This is a problem that we saw the UNC'S doing on their defense. Simply just giving too much respect to your opponents on the attack. And because that entire second floor was cleared out, and then eventually that singular roamer over my open area eventually did go back to the bomb site, you gave essentially 2 minutes to a minute and a half for the UNC'S not only to work those hatches, but waste that utility from Toaster on that Tubarão. And essentially that entire game plan of trying to waste the time, trying to make sure those hatches stay closed, was avoided. It was another one of those situations where the UNC'S just completely went around, countered a main play by Mormon Battalion, even though they did have XGS on that clash over by server, just completely removing the chance of them getting that default bomb on that single wall that you see XGS walk right past. It doesn't matter because the UNC'S, because the way that they're built up, they have such a fluid playstyle with a lot of their players really residing in that flex position. They're able to really just completely change up their game plan, find a different avenue, and create a brand new gap.
Similar strat employed by Mormon Battalion, albeit big difference is it looks like they're trying to play around some kind of a roam. Eggs are still in open, might walk back to the site though. In fact, he is going to. So they're not doing that, they just changed up a couple operators. Still the Clash and the Warden being brought, but otherwise, Goyo, Tubarão, and Aruni. Well, Tube actually was brought last time as well, but the Goyo swapped onto, and the Aruni instead of Jaeger. They still want to try and play around blue stairs and delaying inside a server. But number one, Toaster going to need to be way more attentive to where they're putting down those things on the hatches to try and breach them open, so we could, you know, delay as much as he possibly can. And also, you're going to need to make sure that you use those Goyo canisters more than you use the smoke canisters at the end of last round, because that's a lot more potential delay that they have on the board. And the UNC'S are already starting to move in, but I like the way Exer's playing on that staircase. Falls off as soon as he knows he's under threat, but already a little slower in terms of the attack speed are the UNC'S.
A lot of teams and players really underestimating if you simply just put one player extended in a position they weren't before, or rather extended in the same position, but for a little bit longer, it can change the entirety of an entire round. And now we're seeing, because they had to worry about that player, because they are not able to get control of Garage so easily, we're starting to see that Tubarão come to effect a little bit more. Oof. Doesn't matter though, because out of nowhere, Scary just pulls a entry kill out of his hat.
Crazy. And Eli now down. Better the Mark 14 user in this case is Scary. and he'll shut down the Aruni on the defensive side. Scary goes blow for blow with Exer, and they both lose about 75-ish health. Exer left on a little bit more thanks to being a 3 armor compared to Scary. But Call's going to go in, and with all this util on the attacking side, they knew that they weren't going to be threatened much on the roam. So instead, you can afford to bring a Dokkaebi, a Grim, and all of this util that's going to help so much later on. But Scary shut down as he tries to walk down the marble stairs. Flaw is also going to kill Dead, and notably, that's the case abandoned in the middle of CCTV. This long angle for Cassia going to be so effective, as if they want to get this case back, they'll have to cross directly in front of his line of sight. XGS still inside of server as well. They need to beat Cassia on this angle. They want to get that case back. Hasn't quite happened yet, and Exer, the next one to get a kill onto Zolaris. It's still a 2 versus 4, make it 1. As though one is downed, Millies feels like he has no chance here. 1 kill though. Found onto Exer with a headshot from the pistol, but from right behind him, Laws able to shut things down, and that's Cassia actually, to make sure that things stay even after 2.
Biggest contrast in that round, excluding that one player over by metals or metal detector stairs, just residing in that position a little bit longer, giving them a little bit more to work with, was that entire position of gold and vault was never taken and or flooded like we saw in the first round from the UNC'S, that allowed that player of Toaster to not only continue to hold that control around the site, but also use that angle to an advantage to simply just cut off the player. And on top of that, you have your planter just die on the drop into sight. And a lot of factors, again, we talked about that we've seen Mormon Battalion, they go to that, old play style of just going to the most favorable bomb site back to back, even if you lost it, because simply it's the most effective bomb site, the most effective chance to win, correcting a couple of their micro mistakes and decisions, and it resulted in a complete change of the entire round.
Now they go back to they don't go back to the basement. For the first time this match, we're going to see them on a completely new objective. They go upstairs to CEO and executive, bringing the castle as many teams often do. The Blitz brought again by Star. Not 100% sure if I remember if he was the one who brought it last game or if it was somebody else, but the UNC'S brought this last match, and I believe the only round they brought it in, they won. The first time they brought it, they won though, and that's the notable thing here, because this is also, yet again, the first time they're bringing it this map, so maybe that's just a sign of good things to come. The first time the Blitz comes around, it's just not something Mormon Battalion are ready for just yet, and really not a whole lot of traps in the way when it comes to that Blitz getting into the site and just into the map in general undisturbed. So, could honestly see this going quite well, but Millie's way too far forward and caught out by Exer.
Yeah, a little bit of a misread from this overall setup for Mormon Battalion, not bringing those trap operators, rather really relying on a slow overall take from the UNC'S. But if, we've seen from these players like Sta, whenever there's a site that there's an opportunity to directly take control, whether it be right outside or just taking control of the site itself, they will take advantage of it. And on paper, this overall lineup, this overall objective that they've set up favors them a little bit more. But as I say, that the Blitz comes into action.
Blitz trying to make a play. C4 out. Hopefully that didn't hit the top. It did. It hit the roof, or the top of the doorway rather. Great kill from Flaws though, as Cassie just got a wide swing the Blitz and take it down. Outstanding play to bring things back to a little more even than they were before. It was already even, but rather a bit more favored in the favor now of Mormon Battalion, as they take an extra kill back thanks to Cassia getting that Blitz down. And the entry back into stock from Scary, not going to go too well off the start just yet. Dead inside a square, and have to work together with his teammate to try and eliminate any threats inside a janitor. And there is one right around the corner. Are they aware of this though? Dead needs to be, otherwise he's going to be a dead man himself. Good kill for Toaster to trade out that frag found by Zolaris onto XGS. It remains at an advantage for Mormon Battalion. The walk up marble stairs not going to go anywhere for Zolaris either, and he's very far away from Scary, so whether Toasted knows it or not, he can get this wide swing. It looks like that's what he wants. It's exactly what he's looking for. The wide swing on the isolated player inside a square. Doesn't even swing it though, just waits for him to make the mistake himself. Scary dies, and his last teammate remaining died just before that. And so that means Mormon Battalion at a lead.
I really think that was a round where Yeah, I said on paper with the overall operator lineup, with the goal in mind of trying to directly take into sight, applying pressure to those close off-site positions and extensions that Mormon Battalion has set up. On paper, it should have favored the Unks, but there were so many mistimed plays and overextensions, over pushes from the attack. Most importantly, that blitz just going too far too quick without getting rid of that shield, having such a defined not only player position right side outside of stock, then also having a player right on the top of marble waiting there to support if his teammate so did die. He didn't miss the C4, but that Warden was able there to stop that blitz. It was just kind of a misread from the Unks on the attack. And the good thing for them is that, you know, it's only 3 rounds in. They're able to have those growing pains in these first couple of rounds on the attack. And even though taking this from Pro League, which isn't entirely applicable to this tier of Siege, on paper what we've seen in the most recent meta is that Bank does favor the attack, but deep down, as Bank is really creative, as it really does set, it is really a defender sided.
I would certainly agree with that. Bank can be defender sided, though statistically lately it has kind of been swaying a little bit more attacker sided, especially relative to some of the other maps. So a lot of room for the Unks to find some success, although the big thing to note here is that Mormon Battalion had their pick of what side they started on, and they wanted the defense first. So in all likelihood, they're more confident in their ability to play the defense. XGS walks away at the worst possible time and lets a Flores drone get all the way through open area to break a Maestro cam. Big loss in terms of the util that you've given up that early on. And Millies tries to get even more, but gets spotted with the Twitch drone just before he's able to do too much. But already a minute in, making serious progress here.
Yeah, it's just those micro mistakes, those decisions that may not seem like they really result in much can change the entirety of a round. That Maestro potentially later in this round could just be a lapse of info, and that's exactly what the Unks want to do. That's why they're continuing to bring this switch, because they want to take away every single bit of information that Mormon Battalion have and continue to push them into this darkness when they eventually do go for that execution in this open area bomb site. That's why we're seeing players also like Zorro's on that floor, is they're just simply trying to work this utility before they even try to get close to the site.
And Stubb, before he even gets close to the site, he's going to get one more kill. Rather, his first kill of the map and the first kill of the round. So one more not necessarily applicable, but still. Another kill for the team, and it gives them the early advantage. XGS down early, and 0-0-3, a start for him. Not the only one. Up until that point, Stubb was at the same scoreline as well, and Eli, well, he'll make sure that his captain does not have the worst scoreline in the entire lobby, because now he's 0-0-4. It needs to be the only 3 players on the defensive side with kills at all to pull through yet again for them. However, don't even have the illusion of 2 other teammates, whether they were getting kills or not, still having up there helped extra info, playing it off their positions. But now you know the position of Exer inside of Tellers. He's ready for the play in from Archives, but Millie's even more ready for him. And so his 30 seconds are left on the clock. Surely this execute needs to come through soon, and as they've removed the presence of the player on the other part of the first floor, this could make it a lot easier. Toaster's still yet to walk up from Marble, and he's actually going to walk all the way up to the second floor. Not going to be expected in this position, although the pre-fire perfectly timed, and it seems like Dead knew exactly where to expect him. And Solaris knows exactly where to expect Cassia. Wonderful kill to close it out.
We're seeing a lot more than the viewers are seeing, and I also think the Unks are seeing a lot more than Mormon
They
Battalion
can't
are
see
seeing.
that?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like they have to be able to see that.
Honest, I hope so.
Oh my gosh, they
that's
can't,
such a
dude.
waste. That's such a waste.
Oh, we just got trolled, man.
Wow, that's insane.
And now we have to
man.
talk about it because we have to acknowledge it, because there's no way we could ignore what we just saw. Do we want to even tell them? I feel like it's funny if we just never say what we just looked at.
No, we don't. It's
Yeah, no, we're not
yeah,
telling them.
we'll see. Yeah, we will.
But yeah, so we're getting shown things by our producer. Stan's already meowed in my ear 4 times this broadcast, and it's about to be a 5th.
Counting on it. Nonetheless.
I'm just waiting.
Mormon Battalion will be taking us back down to this basement bomb site. So far, won it once and lost it the other time. And I talked about this. We saw this when the Unks were attacking all the way back on Skyscraper not too long ago that we saw relatively a very quick opening round, clearing those first 2 floors. This time around, Mormon Battalion bringing a Legion, Capcan, and Exige out of all players on the Oryx. I like the idea, I understand the method behind it, but again, you really just simply have to win those gunfights. He's going to continue to put himself in that very dangerous and hot positions.
Back down to the basement for Mormon Battalion, and this a very unique way of going about it, and the composition doesn't necessarily scream unique, but I see 3 people in Dirt Tunnel, and that screams to me that it's going to be a very unique way of attacking. Exige got on Oryx this round. A shame that they're finally going for a roam game, and the UNC'S have read into these perfectly. They are walking just into dirt and really not taking control of too much else. Exige trying to actively threaten them from upstairs, but if the server hatch is reinforced, then that makes it pretty much impossible to shut down what the UNC'S are trying to do. The only way you can really do it at this point is by killing them straight up, and Eggs are going to do just that by dispatching of stun. I have to imagine that's going to slow this takedown and make sure the UNC'S know what their next steps are going to be, and more importantly, know that their next steps aren't just going to be walking right into Xer's line of sight again.
The UNC'S, though, using that, using Zolaris to just make his way through dirt, they have complete control of server. Problem being,
it's not reinforced,
though,
it's open.
Exige is up top. Scary Mills are able to get one, but that hatch is still open, and the potential to shut down this entire push is still in the hands of Exige.
Scary's in Archives, though, and that could possibly be a big problem, but it's not to Exige, who shuts him down real quick. And now Dead, very low on the site, opens up a way to try and get a plant down, but I'm not sure where this case is, and importantly, Exige, I know where he still is. He's still in a very problematic position on only 6 HP. But it might just get worse. Great timing on that swing from Dead. And that's exactly what he needed to bring them back into the picture. Drone now left for the flank, but Exer does everything. He just gets aggressive. I don't know how you let him get away with it, but somehow a hero play from the Legion will go 1, 2, 3 to make it 3, 2, 2 in favor of Mormon Battalion.
That is exactly what Mormon Battalion need. Throughout this entire group stage of XGS Season 7, and even last map, they never had, whether it be one player or two, that really stepped up and shut down those plays, shut down those, whether it be an entry engagement or an execution, like we just saw Exer completely shut down. Like, exactly, the UNC'S with Scary and Millies. The Mormon Battalion, necessarily aside from Exer, didn't have that. And he wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily say awake, but he wasn't at his fullest potential. But that round, not only in the overall round count, getting that round win, but mentally really just wakes the entire team up. And all you need, just like a basketball player seeing his ball go through the net, you just need to have some success. And it gives you the confidence to continue on.
I mean, fair analogy, but seeing a basketball player seeing his ball go through the net was a little bit of a roundabout way to say it. I guess he's got his takeover active. Exer is playing 2K right now, and safe to say he's been performing pretty well for Mormon Battalion so far tonight, consistently stepping up big time when they need those big time performances. Already on 9-3 this map. Next best is Cassie at 5-3. And well, one of his teammates who was killless, but in an impact spot last round and able to start to step it up big time as well as Exige. On the board, already a big step up, exponentially greater than the amount of kills he had earlier on. And the UNC'S, you know, obviously looking to tie this half up at 3-3. They'll need to try and make another attack work into the top floor for that to be what happens. With all this pressure already on the bomb site, as well as the ace charge, though it's shot off, very clear that they are trying to focus direct on this site as soon as possible and playing these repels as much as they can.
The problem with this overall strategy is that your entire round, your entire win factor, essentially comes down to these windows. If these window plays do not work out, if Dead is not able to catch a player off and gets picked off by X, or if they're not able to get rid of that Mira, it's going to be essentially just the entire round done. They're putting all of their cards into this one spot, this one push around the map. Thankfully, though, they do have a more well-rounded overall lineup. They're not entirely realizing or relying on that blitz. They're going to have a whole lot more attacking utility to back off of it, which does give them a little bit more flexibility.
Only a minute and 20 to go for the UNC'S to try and work their way through. Nade towards Babbler Eli's position. Well, he's still going to keep on living pretty much undisturbed. Studs into the site, getting a plant down, and even though there's 2 kills in a row for the attack, that plant's still being stuck, but eventually Stug getting scared because he's 3 kills now for the defense, and only 1 in response from Zolaris. It was Eli getting taken down inside a janitor closet, but now he's finally on the board. Another kill, though, for Zolaris. If they keep letting him get away with this, things could go from bad to worse for the defense, or not even really bad to worse, from good to bad at all, as the player inside of the bomb site actively threatening that plant, and there's nothing that anyone can do about Sta here. No one even really doing anything too outlandish to try and counter that play, as X are able to get the kill on his Sta, and now it needs to be the run out. It needs to be the hop outside the building to kill the player here, but the Claymore gets 2, and now Flaws. Cassia tried to run out. Is he going to have enough time to get back inside the building? 2 of his teammates dying to that Claymore mean that nobody who was closer than him could possibly do it, but it also means he's very wary of the Claymores himself. I don't quite know if he has the time here. Still so much ground to cover, and maybe he hasn't picked the fastest way back. It's also behind an Osa shield, so he may not be able to stick it as soon as he possibly can. 8, 7, I think he just barely got there in time, as there were still 7 seconds left on it. And so in spite of how close it'll be, less than a second, the gap of success and failure there, but just decisive enough is Cassia to make sure that they win in round number 6 and go 4-2 up after that half.
Talk about a wow factor for a round. That entire round just was won by milliseconds. That is plays you don't see every now and again, but nonetheless, a lot of mistakes on both parts of the team. The overall lineup for the UNC'S, again, I talked about it, simply relied on winning those gunfights on the windows, getting that bomb down. Lucky enough for the UNC'S, though, Mormon Battalion, as soon as Zolaris was able to get that pick over in Janitors, all 3 players were over by Office and Banana's side, allowing his teammate to just safely put that bomb down and not really be contested. Bad side for the UNC'S is they didn't expect 3 players to jump out of a window. You can have 2 Claymores, usually what you see, but you don't really expect a 3rd. And again, it's just one of those rounds where because you were not able to win that entry game, then get recovered from it and continue to dwindle down that man count, putting yourself in a 2v4, it just really comes down to a situation. You just have to get those players, get those trades into eventually there's no opponents left.
Now Mormon Battalion on the attacking side, the UNC'S with their chance to go defense, and already a very different kind of setup. You got Millies on Oryx, basically doing what XGS was doing last round. In fact, a pretty similar comp overall to what Mormon Battalion were just doing. Millies just trying to make his presence known, with Scary presumably prone inside printer room, actually going for a run out, and he gets it to boot as well. 2 maps in a row where Scary has gone for a very aggressive, very early play with a lot to lose out of possibly failing, but 2 times in a row it's worked. Mormon Battalion not ready for it, as that was something like a dozen or so rounds ago, completely forgetting about that risk of the early threat from Scary, and he's back on the board with that opening pick that, like we talked about in the pre-show, he is so good at getting.
Talk about an opening, and speaking of entry picks, every round previously before this matchup that the UNC'S got an opening pick, they had an 84% conversion rate, and it continues. We saw after they got that pick, they didn't overextend, overswing onto that player on the single window, that being Eli. And because of that, not only have Mormon Battalion lost that first entry pick, have absolutely no map control over in this extension by open area. On top of that, half of the round is gone. Still droning, still trying to push this player back down to site over by elevator, which they eventually do have some success in doing.
Now missing the Grim gonna really come back to bite them. And I like that decision from the Uncs to fall back. Whether or not they realize it was the Grib, you've killed the main operator on that attack that's going to make this execute really annoying. Because you think about what Cassia was going to be able to do with all that utility. Spam out Red Hall, Garage, Sprinkler, whatever you want. Or the Sprinkler underneath the Red Hall hatch. Could do anywhere near where Scary or Millies are to deal with those rat angles. There are so many things he could have done. Other than that, though, you got some flashbangs and some smoke grenades and maybe some EMPs to work with in an execute. You don't have that real kicker bit of util because Cassia already down.
So much time wasted on top of that. Scary is looking to retake, but Exige, where are you looking?
Oh no! I don't quite know how Exige got that far down without being recognized at all, but Scary, it's safe to say he is having a massive round. The only one on his team to get any kills so far. And Eli going to make sure that Zolaris not able to add to that tally, but the play into CCTV is shut down immediately because Millies is still upstairs and they never fully cleared him. A double kill for the Oryx. Triple kill over the round, it would seem. Although I think that means that one of them was knocked down by Scary. Doesn't matter. 2 kills for Eli, but he's just baiting for his frags. And that round, pretty much as free as could be for the defense.
Every single round that you see won by the Uncs, you can tell it's won because they're in all chat. If you see all chat going off, you know it's an Uncs round. But again, just the capability, not only for the Uncs, doesn't matter if it's Scary, doesn't matter if it's Millies. Not only do they get that opening pick, but they continue to put themselves in such a safe position, or rather a difficult position, for Mormon Battalion to get that trade back, to answer back with another kill. It really puts them in a difficult situation. On top of that, you still had a player upstairs inside of Elevator holding that position, wasting even more time, and that's exactly what Mormon Battalion tried to do on their 2 holds down in that basement. Didn't have as much success, but again, starting off the defense, the Uncs really finding an answer, finding a formula that Mormon Battalion didn't have an answer to.
And now they need to find an answer to a completely different bomb site. Scary, the one on the Oryx this time. Maybe that's the impact operator that they all decided they're going to take turns playing. Last map, it felt like it was Miro on the defense. This time around, they've already played 2 rounds of Oryx. And we're only 2 rounds into this defensive half, so you do the math there. And the Uncs now go into open area and staff room. No Azami in this map is really felt on this site in particular because of how good she can be here. Generally good on open area roams for the basement. Also can be useful on the 2nd floor, but this one probably the marquee site for Azami on this map if I had to pick just one. Roam upstairs here for open area and staff room, though. Going to be a lot looser than usual. Sometimes you'll see teams set someone up in janitor and then play another player near Trump. Here they really just told Scary, listen man, you're off the leash, go play Oryx and go try and have a really fun time. And so far, he's trying to threaten a run out. They're trying to make sure they don't quite know of it just yet, but it looks like he's ran away and that not really going to turn into anything.
Yeah, that ash charge on the wall and the drone is going to put him in a position where he's essentially forced to run back. The pings will continue to go out, so they know that he's still residing in this top position over by Elevator, but he doesn't need a swing. He doesn't need to go for the pick, and he understands that. All of his job here is to waste time. Eventually, he will fall back. Half of the round now wasted, and this is essentially not only what Scary wanted, but the entire idea of him playing up here was to waste time. If he could get a pick rather, that would be great. But if you look at this overall defense on the open area with that castle barricade, the cades on the hatches, there's another problem. You don't just have to worry about those roamers. You have to worry about the plethora of defender utility on the site before you can even get close to executing on it.
And when we saw Mormon Battalion defending this site, it felt like a lot of their defenders had already died before this extension was even being actively threatened. Here the Uncs played that tightrope game of falling back at the right times perfectly, and Mormon Battalion 2 minutes into the round have basically done nothing to actively threaten anybody off of the site. Zolaris only has to worry about this side of his entry into Tellers because the other side getting covered from Marble. I think 2 players over there. Yeah, Scary and... no, really just Scary at the moment, but still. moved out of the elevator, but Flaw's actually going to get that opening kill on Zolaris. So, Cassia hops onto the board. Great position from XGS as well to catch the fall off that they knew was going to happen. And because he didn't have to actually walk up Marble himself, he just waited for Scary to do it. They have a little bit more time than they could have if Scary had just decided he was going to die on that position. Wanted to play around keeping himself alive in a new spot, and ended up dying for that. Only 20 seconds, though, and that lack of time, that lack of progress that they made early on might really start to bite them here. Still not quite sure where the push wants to come through, but the walk into small office from Eli is just going to start to set things in motion, but Stug gets one with his C4. The case is down. They only have 3 seconds to recover this, and XGH gets one, and somehow they are able to do it. In only 3 seconds to recover a round, they make it work with no case in hand. And a double kill for 2 different members of Mormon Battalion in the last 5 seconds.
Talk about taking your time. That was probably the definitive example of if you give Mormon Battalion enough time to drone you out, set up their execution, it is really like, see the plethora of Canadian styles, especially with SSG back in 2020, 2021, where they would always attack the last 20 to 30 seconds, almost to the point where it was an entire meta. And that's what we're seeing at least attempted. And that was, in my opinion, what was a successful round of Mormon Battalion, or rather what they wanted the round to look like. And in theory, it is such a difficult way to play Siege, because if you have one little mistake, one little problem player early that can get that opening pick, waste just enough time, your entire strategy, your entire theory of Siege is just dismantled and broken apart. But if you're able to reside, keep that man count, and put a team like the UNC'S that, in time in these hot situations might miscommunicate, get overzealous and just a little bit flustered, then that's when you start to have success.
Did you see it again, too?
No, I didn't. That was just you.
No. Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm seeing things. I can't. I don't know the visions, man.
Stan's haunted your mind.
They're keeping me up at night. The visions are keeping me up at night. Visions of Zaysho singing. I forget what song, but he put his whole heart and soul into it. I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. Thank you, Stan, for telling me that. He actually hasn't meowed in my ear a 5th time yet, so I was wrong in suggesting that. Also, way more important than anything I'm talking about, Teller's defense for the UNC'S. Interesting sight to bring out, not typically considered viable given all the other good sites on this map. But this one in and of itself, you look far enough back into the history, used to be considered one of the better sites on the map, but looks like Cassia trying to find a gap early.
And this is exactly what Mormon Battalion needed, whether it be a single player.
Oh, nice.
Almost getting a second, but Millie's, the entire hold there was structured to shut down that player. But the problem is you still have all of these hardened players on the top floor. It really continues to give problems for Mormon Battalion to deal with. And this is something that they didn't necessarily have to deal with as much as they did in the round previous.
Also, risky setup here. One player on the objective with a route directly into the site itself could get a little bit sketchy later on. Can't say scary because he's playing in this lobby, and that just feels awkward to me. And it looks like that actually is the main idea for Mormon Battalion. Look, 3 of their 4 attackers are on the first floor itself, push into small office, almost shutting down the player on the first floor. And that is Millie's, who eventually dies. But now they're aware there's going to be some kind of response from the UNC'S, and they've caught the response perfectly as well. Toaster not trying to overheat, instead just sitting back and waiting for the over-aggression to come through. Sta is going to take down XGS right after, though. So things still getting a little bit sketchy for both sides. It's kind of turned into a glorified free-for-all, with the attackers kind of under control of the site, but not quite wanting to take full control just yet, because they're worried about some of those vertical angles. The vertical angles, though, not being used anymore. Instead, one towards Square, and Zolaris has worked his way back into Tellers, but not quite Archives. They still are very vulnerable in that part of the map, and Stahl goes for a very ill-advised jump over the railing, and he ends up getting punished for it. Zolaris has to do it himself, and the Buck opening the wall. Eli just opens up completely unthought of angles until that very moment, and he gets a really solid round win for Mormon Battalion.
And after that very warranted, the UNC'S are going to take their time out. That position that they found themselves on Skyscraper, where they're able to essentially read the entire idea of the defense, spot those gaps early on, even before they were in a place to actually execute onto those gaps, isn't there. Oh, they're not able to find these gaps. They're no longer there. Mormon Battalion are putting on just what is just absolutely a great attack. They try round after round. As a matter of fact, back to back rounds, try to leave sight a little bit soft, allowing for Mormon Battalion to feel that false sense of security. But the problem is their flanks are being watched. Mormon Battalion very well aware of their surroundings, and that puts them in a position where there is no opportunity for that flank, no opportunity for that retake to be executed from the UNCs, and their entire game plan is being thrown out the window. And as of now, they don't really have a great response in that fluidity I talked about earlier to really adapt and change what they want to do.
And after struggling on the defense in two of their first three site choices, even if you managed to get the basement to go your way again, which was pretty solid, you looked really good down there, but even still, you gotta go back to two more sites. Whether you want to try the second floor for the first time if you're not considering it one of your better sites coming into this game, or at least not considering it good enough to play it as one of your first three, or you want to try one of the last two sites that you played on where, in spite of some mistakes from Mormon Battalion's attack, especially in the second round of the half, they still won both attacks against you. Now, the Teller's Archives attack just looked really solid from Mormon Battalion, I can't lie. Just goes to show that maybe there's a faulty strat, maybe they got the wrong idea, and that's not the kind of site where, you can change things up on a dime and feel confident that you've got a good idea what you're doing. It's the fourth site in most teams' hierarchy for a reason, because it's not considered so great. So back downstairs, looking exciting to start with, but I'm not fully convinced that the UNCs have what it takes to make this comeback. I need to see at least something beyond round 10 to be fully convinced that they could make this comeback happen.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's very confusing, but it's very weird to see that both teams going to their map pick simply just whether or not having a great idea of what they want to do against their opponents, or rather their opponents simply just having a better idea, having that knowledge on how to counter. And it really goes back to just the UNCs not being able to deny that drone economy, being able to deny that intel in a rush from XGS to just open the round is just shut down.
Oh, it's completely shut down. Stall with one, dead with two. And that play was
Stinky.
basically not a play at all. Stinky is one way you could put it. Flaws, beaten by the recoil on the FMG9, which honestly, don't sleep on it. It can be really annoying to play with that gun sometimes, especially with the ACOG. But more importantly, well, it's a 1v5 for Eli, and honestly, I respect him. I respect him for just walking in. He just did not even try and drag that out any longer. Oh, scared. Looking like he was walling there. Oh, I was wondering why he had such a good entry, KD. Huh. Curious.
Good luck tonight, Andrew, checking that Moss file. But nonetheless, that was a round where Mormon Battalion, they were up 3 rounds. They said to themselves, let's see if we can get away with this. Let's see if we can just sneak in and shut this out here. And the UNCs are just well-rounded enough to just completely shut it down. Realizing that 3 players being over in main lobby rushing one hatch is like, they're going to drop it. And it's one of those situations where you just need to see it, most likely from default cam, being able to read the situation. But the problem now in hand is Mormon Battalion, they can't continue to do that. The UNCs are only 2 rounds away from sending us to overtime. And if Mormon Battalion continue to take these really lazy ways into the site, lazy rounds to potentially shut this match out, we're going to see the UNCs continue to shut it down. But I don't think that's going to happen. That's not what Mormon Battalion XGS is known for. They're known for their plethora of deep ideas and strategies. And going into what could potentially be our last round, we see exactly a similar lineup than we saw the UNCs bring, really focusing on getting rid of that defender until the early on before actually executing.
And now we go back open area. It feels like last round didn't even really happen. And honestly, Mormon Battalion not really trying to get too caught up in how to go about attacking a basement site that they pretty much fell flat on their face trying to attack the first time. Either get it over with quick, or you manage to catch them off guard. The former of those two happened. unfortunate for the attack, but now they get back into a site that they know how to do, and it's 2 or 3 minutes more fresh in their memory. But apparently the idea of Scary going for these spawn peaks, going for these early plays, not fresh enough in their memory, because he's just shut down Cassia in the first 30 seconds. It's the second time this map and the third time this series that he's had a play like that. Big impact being found from some of these early plays from Scary, and Mormon Battalion consistently not ready for it.
It really is. It's not every single round. The Mormon Battalion have done a great job of just really shutting down. But in the rounds where Scary's able to find these opening picks, almost like 8 times out of 10, the Mormon Battalion are not in a position to get that trade back. They don't have these bodies really piled up next to each other, and because of that, we're seeing these picks go completely untraded. Kind of a split push, focusing over by this bottom square position, getting this wall open, trying to push those players out by Archive side. And this entire wall on the bomb site is open, exposing not only these defenders, but pushing them back over to open.
The problem now is you don't have much explosive util left. Matter of fact, I don't think you have any at all, and there's still a castle barricade on the double door into staff. So that's going to be hard to dispatch of. Eli at least able to dispatch of dead. So that's worth something. He shot at the drone, and it still just wasn't even acknowledged. And you know, one shot, not really noticeable, so I understand why whoever was droning there wasn't able to notice that, but even still, it looks funny to see. Is that one a wide swing from Millie's? One shot able to knock down Eli. If he gets picked back up, he'll be at more health than he was just at a few seconds ago. But even still, what do you do at the end of this round?
It's just a difficult position. No map control aside from this top floor. They tried to push these defenders out, but because they were able...
Your teammate's drone, buddy.
Down, but Scary with the flank is eventually shut down. An opening that Mormon Battalion absolutely needed.
Like you said, they don't have too much map control, but if the UNC'S keep trying to swing them with the map control they have and Mormon Battalion are ready for it, well, safe to say they'll be in a decent position anyway. Zolaris not making sure that XGS wasn't ready for that, but a great entry through from Toaster is going to get shut down after he's gotten 1 kill. Diffuser dropped in the middle of the site, and Millies is going to shut down Eli right after. Zolaris is going to get the last one too. It looked like it had some potential here or there from Mormon Battalion, but at the end of the day, like you said, just no control.
No control. And it's the exact same problem we saw in Skyscraper, that Mormon Battalion doesn't take any spots around the map that is being held. If they see an open spot, they take it, and they said, that's good enough. And the problem with that is, not only did you have little to no map control, but the vertical wasn't being played, allowed Zoloris to retake that position in Archives, shut down that last player, and you had no one over by metal detector. It was essentially a one-sided, one-directional push that essentially allowed those last 3 defenders over by those offices in open area to just play back. They didn't have to really worry about anyone shooting him in the back. They read the situation, that it was a very front-sided push. They could just sit back, let those defenders swing, and then the very deep angle being held all the way from Archives into that kitchen plant was just completely shut down. So again, it's just a lot of not enough due diligence. Not only not having enough map control, but also that intel simply was not there when they needed it.
5 seconds to insertion.
And now I've seen enough from the UNC'S. They can make it happen, that's the thing. They needed to just win another site other than the basement to even just prove that they have it in their back pocket to do that. Now they go back to Tellers and Office, and this is the problem where this site, it felt like their hold of it fundamentally felt a little off. It felt like there were big gaps that were left there for Mormon Battalion to take, and that's exactly what Mormon Battalion did. So, how convinced can you really be about a hold like this? I can't imagine that Mormon Battalion are just going to do the same exact thing again, but look, they've got XGS with the case on Blitz, so I'd imagine that maybe, just maybe, it's going to be a quick play, and the mirror window taken down as well. Huge early round.
That is a huge early round, and we saw a semblance of this last round, really putting a lot of focus on just clearing a lot of, especially the defender utility on the site. So if you were able to eventually find a gap, find a little crack and opening that allowed you to directly take site, ignore these out of sight defenders, you had it open. You didn't have to worry about the utility. But the problem now is not only do you have such a strong hold above, but also you have Scary on that solo. So even if you're able to slip your way into sight, Scary is going to be in a position to shut it down from below.
And Zolaris is still here towards Trump as well. So they can't quite walk into the site just yet the way that it looked like they wanted to. The Ash charge into ATMs and they just go into tellers. Could easily get...
Oh, I think he's gone. Okay, well, I'll take over a little bit. Zolaris still residing in this position, but also you have Dead on the cage shotgun out of all things. Definitely not what you would expect swinging in this position. Could potentially hold a player off guard. XGS, he tries to get that plant down, but the vertical from above shuts it down. Eventually, Toaster is able to find the pick onto him, even out to a 4v4, but that bomb that they tried to get down so early on simply will not work.
At least they shut down Zolaris upstairs. It's like my internet shut down my attempt at trying to speak. Millie's is going to get extra X though. And so it's an advantage now to the defense, and they might just sneak this out to overtime. Unlike Mormon Battalion's attempt on the last map, the UNC'S, with a good streak of rounds towards the end of the map, might just have enough in the tank. 40 seconds to go, and Mormon Battalion, same problem as previous rounds. They don't take a lot of active map control. They just tried to play around that one gap they thought that they saw. That gap very much accounted for by the UNC'S, and even though there was a trade early, just a man disadvantage without much control to work with, and plenty of players in the same area as the site, not nearly as much in terms of opportunities as you had in the first time you attacked this site, but Eli and Toaster are able to get one each, so it still looks like they may have a chance. Marble stairs from Dead, gonna need to be a big play. Cassius trying to play it right next to a guy on Marble, though, who gave himself away, and you gotta try and go for the swing, instead of trying to stick the plant behind a soft wall when you know the man's at the Marble. And because they didn't do that, Cassia died, the last teammate died right after, and we need overtime in map 2.
It honestly, and I don't like to say this a lot, it just really looks like at least what they are putting up on these two maps in this series, that Mormon Battalion's defense, or sorry, not defense, but attack rather, isn't the best. There's a lot of faults, and it really seems like it's very thin compared to their defense. Just they really always go for the easy opportunities. If there's an opportunity that they see that's easy, whether it be just ignoring trying to take map control away, taking the map control that isn't even being held by their opponents, or rather in that round, XG's entire game plan, the entire win factor was getting that bomb down with the blitz without clearing above. And obviously with the vertical hold, that entire extension upstairs was there to shut down a rush onto the bomb site. It really goes to show that going both onto attacks on both maps, that Mormon Battalion, compared to their defense, doesn't have as a deeper bag as they may have thought.
5 seconds to go.
You know, all the adaptations being made on the defensive side by the UNC'S. I mean, they looked pretty rough their first time through, 2 out of those 3 bomb sites, and then they win them the next time around. They understand what went wrong, and they adjusted their win cons properly. Already, quick presence towards open and staff by Mormon Battalion as well as electrical. And hopefully very wary of the possibility of a scary early play from, well, Scary, as he's been doing it quite a lot, and they haven't seemed to have caught him for it most times, but for now it's just a quick roam clear of the top floor, and they really want to take their time, make sure that they don't get caught out by any odd plays from someone like Scary or otherwise. But already a lot of presence on this first floor is falling off and just trying to shoot drones and then get back.
Scary eventually will fall back while Millies tries to retake that position, but if you saw from our observer, that hatch inside of vault, or not vault, but elevator rather, is soft. So not only has the entire first 2 floors and the entirety of the room set up by the UNC'S have been cleared out, but Mormon Town, they have a plethora of time, and this is the position where they need to be careful. Obviously, they want to not overstep their welcome. Make sure they drone everything out, set up the push as best as possible, but also you don't want to take too much time, putting yourself into a very unorthodox, very uncomfortable 30 to maybe 15-second bomb plan. And as you can see from Siege and Toaster over inside, they're trying to go for this default plan, and a nice shot for Millies.
A nice shot for Toaster onto Millies. And that'll make things definitely solid for Mormon Battalion, opening up the angles into the site. And now the big thing that you need here is for Eli to get a Twitch drone into CCTV and shoot all of those Goyo canisters. If Eli is close enough to that CC hatch, nothing should stop him from being able to do that. However, the problem here is I don't know if there are any drones for him left, or at least Twitch drones, that is. But also, he's towards garage, so he's not really going to be able to easily get in and start to break some of those Goyos. But I think he's starting to do it now, as he just broke Amira. And Zolaris trying to be wary of his possible threat towards garage. Really, really late play from Eli, probably hoping that they'll look away and start to focus on the main execute before he makes his play, and thus they won't be looking at him. But Eli getting looked at as he tries to make a play forward. And it looks like this push actually might start to rotate just a little bit. Oh, nice shot from Cassia, though, as he spots out a little bit of Scary, and now they know they have the opportunity they need. The Bees to cut off the rotation in from Gold, everything getting cut off, but it's Zolaris on Marble, who needs to make a big play and find that isolated lurker in garage in Eli. Eli gonna wait and take his time with swinging this play, but Zolaris gets two! One drops the hatch, another one tries to play from garage, but Eli gets all three in a row from garage! He just shuts the whole defense down, and there's no chance when he's letting it sing like that.
Killing all three defenders swinging him at essentially the same time, aside from that last defender, by Vault. Eli has been freed and has absolutely shown up after Mormon Battalion up 3 rounds, lost those 3 rounds in regulation, finally translating over to the defense, or not defense, but overtime, was a little bit shaky, was a little bit scared that they were going to continue that consistency of losing, but they shut it down. They were able to essentially do everything was needed. And again, I talked about it earlier in the series, the UNC'S just giving them too much respect on that, first initial minute. Top 2 floors with a minute 59 left exactly was completely cleared, and then essentially 5 to 10 seconds later, Mormon Battalion, they were able to drone it out, relay the information, and finally start to actually set up their exit. And if we've seen not only in matches previously, but all the way back on Skyscraper, all the way back on their actual attack on this map specifically too, we've seen if you give them as much time as needed, that being 2 minutes essentially, they will work with every single one, find every single little bit that you are playing on that bomb site and dissect you essentially like a frog.
Did you really have to add that at the end? I like the way you said it too. Like a frog. Just, I don't know. Anyway. We go to round 14, overtime. Already 1 round through, when the UNC'S now have to be the ones to make an attack work into the basement defense of Mormon Battalion. Also pretty successful, but hey, Mormon Battalion themselves hadn't won a basement attack until that last round. They lost it twice in regulation, so OT, anything can really happen. And again, notable that Mormon Battalion are on that match point threshold, which means, or not match point threshold per se, but they're on match point, which means that the pressure is on them. And last time we saw them on match point, the last few times we saw them on match point, they lost every single round. So maybe they can't hang up or hang when the pressure is really on, but I will say I really like this Kaid pick. That makes it easier to prevent these hatches from being opened immediately on the round. EMPs not spread throughout too much of this attacking lineup. And that's some solid time waste right there.
They get the hatch open, though. That is actually huge. The 1 round in regulation where Mormon Battalion won this bomb site, the entirety of Golden Vault was closed off. Not even the hatch and not open area, but main lobby being opened once. That just completely eliminating that win factor, that factor in the round of entirely. Now that being open, again, on paper, that last time we saw them, especially with that hatch being open, it just continues to put them in pressure. There's so many angles and hatches they have to worry about, eventually putting them in a very difficult spot.
Really early execute here, it looks like, from the UNC'S. And the C4 from Xer is going to shut down Sta. case dropped on the ground, miscommunication and trying to pick it back up, and as both Millies and Dead reach for the case, Solaris is going to go down right after. Here goes Exer for even more. It looks like we will need map 3 between these two. It's only Dead who could possibly do anything else about it. And don't be fooled, his name possibly applicable here because he's basically a dead man walking in the 1 versus 5. With only Cassie and Eli with any health at all taken off of them. The aggressive swings, everyone trying to fight for the kills, but it's the Captain XGS to force this ship forward, to right the course after map number 1, and to send us to the French consulate for the last map of our first quarterfinal.
Throughout this entire series, I've talked about how those micro decisions, those micro mistakes, a 1C4 killing that planter simply because he chose to drop at that exact moment, not baiting the drop, shut down the entirety of that round. And this is exactly why I love best of threes, because those mistakes that we saw made by Mormon Battalion on map 1 were allowed to be made. You had that ability to make mistakes, to learn from your mistakes, going on to map 2, and now going on to the third map that on paper favors both teams.
Yeah, it really does. It's interesting. A map that we've seen some play on from both of them having played it once. And I think it's, unlike this map, it's Mormon Battalion who lost it the one time they played it, and the UNC'S who were able to win it. Just makes it even more exciting, though, that, well, going into that last map of this series, it feels like it could be anybody's game, but will it be Mormon Battalion coming back after a rough map 1, or will the UNC'S close it out after losing sight of the goal on map number 2 just a little bit? You'll have to stick around through the break, but once we're back, it's the end of this quarterfinal.
You are my fire, the one desire, believe when I say I want it that way. But we are two worlds apart. Can't reach to your heart when you say that I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Your fire, your one desire. Yes, I know it's too late. I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why ain't another a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Now I can see that we're falling apart. The moment that it used to be, yeah. No matter the distance, I want you to know that deep down inside of me, yeah. My fire, the one desire. You are, you are, you are. Don't wanna hear you say ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me motherfucking why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heart. Tell me why. Mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say that Zay Show is not a TPL caster, because I just fucking rock this song because I want it that way. TPL, Matthew Tape, Adam Stanley. Give me caster. You are my fire, the one desire. Believe when I say I want it that way. But we are two worlds apart. Can't reach to your heart when you say that I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Your fire, your one desire. Yes, I know it's too late. I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why ain't another a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Now I can see that we're falling apart. The moment that it used to be, yeah. No matter the distance, I want you to know that deep down inside of me, yeah. My fire, the one desire. You are, you are, you are. Don't wanna hear you say ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me motherfucking why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heart. Tell me why. Mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say that Zay Show is not a TPL caster, because I just fucking rock this song because I want it that way. TPL, Matthew Tape, Adam Stanley. Give me caster.
Map number 3, finally, here between Mormon Battalion and the UNC'S. It's been quite a long road to get to our last map, but this is only the first quarterfinal. We still got 3 more quarterfinals and then 3 more games after that. But Mormon Battalion taking the UNC'S map selection away from them, as the UNC'S did on map number 1 to Mormon Battalion. Massive map for Exer. Huge games from a lot of the members of the server. Really, only XGS is the only one who didn't even quite get close to staying even, and even still, he had a number of very impactful rounds where he made all the difference, playing ops like Clash and Habana on a much more supportive role. So even still, everyone pitching in for both sides, yet it seems that the Mormon Battalion had a slightly more complete plan in terms of how they were going to start to get that W. But it's a whole new map now. No matter how good your bank plans were, you still need to take 2 of them, and on Consulate, safe to say that the track record between these 2 teams favors the UNC'S, albeit, well, Mormon Battalion did have to play Makers, but still.
Yeah. Last time the UNC'S came to this map, it was an 8-7 win versus Mormon Battalion losing it 7-3 against Makers. So you can only, take away so much, but losing 4 attacking rounds in a row after translating from a 3-3 half starting on the defense. And I think whether or not this is a problem, they can go back and the gaps and mistakes they looked were executed and shown by a team like Makers, where they're going to get a whole lot more useful information. Not to take away from other teams, but you're going to see the gaps from a team that can really spot them a lot quicker, a lot easier, and just gaps are a lot harder to spot also. So I think even though that they lost, that was a very valiant game day rep that they can really take and really push themselves into this matchup after coming back after the second map.
Yeah, playing against a team like Makers is going to help you out, especially on game day against Makers. Yeah. Not just scrimming against some of the T1 teams you might get scrims against sometimes, but a game day matchup against a team that close to being Pro League level. I would argue Pro League level at the moment, but still, you can't necessarily, not the time nor the place for that conversation. But still, that's going to help a lot to have game day reps against a team like that to really make your map way better. So even though they may have lost in the short term, as we cube effect into the game from the map flyover, they may have lost that game in the short term, but really should understand the weaknesses of this map for them. And now the big problem is, how do we get some attacks going? Which honestly, I hear you say 3-3 defense half and then 0-4 attack half, and my first thought is, you got to make those defenses better, man.
Yeah.
0-4 on Consulate of all maps. It feels understandable.
Yeah, it really does. And we can compare a map like Consulate to Skyscraper. Obviously, it doesn't play anywhere next to the same, but those are 2 of the maps that are just so defender-sided that if you have a 3-3 split on your defense, you're going to have some attacking rounds. And last time that we saw Mormon Battalion on Skyscraper, that was the problem. They simply could not pull out more than 1 attacking round. So there's either 2 options here. You can either get a very dominant start on that defense, preferably, in my opinion, especially if you lost 4 rounds, a 5-1 to 4-2 is nothing to feat at. But more importantly, you just got to lock down those attacks. We talked about how they lost 4 in a row against Makers. They have all the info needed. On top of that, that was a very aggressive game from Makers, which also can translate into a team against the UNC'S.
How did they lower the chat size that much?
I don't know if you saw the first chat last game, but I think there's a reason they did that.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one. But yeah, I don't know. I was more so confused about how they did it.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't know you could do it either. I know they just said Andrew's that battery in there.
Could be a bug.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bug. It feels intentional, like you said. It feels intentional. I don't know why you didn't just turn it off at that rate. That feels like a really inconvenient way of solving the problem. Anyways, Mormon Battalion are going to start on defense. Very fortunate as well. We saw the impact that starting on defense first could have on these really defender-sided maps in map number 1. A map that Mormon Battalion picked into. Maybe they had great defensive strats, but we couldn't even really see most of them. They looked good on it for the most part, but 1 blitz rush and 1 rough round where they just got unlucky and walked into one of the best individual rounds that we've had so far today. Well, that's all that it really took to get the 2 rounds that the UNC'S needed because they had that defense start. So, Mormon Battalion, with that heavy advantage, however, it can quickly turn into a disadvantage if 1 or 2 of these early rounds don't go their way.
The good thing for the UNC'S though, and it's kind of like a dual-edged sword, where this map is so huge. It was the biggest until Ubisoft did us all a great favor of adding layer. Thank you. But because it's such a huge map, we saw on the previous two maps, there was a lot of isolated roamers on the defense from Mormon Battalion, and that gives these really unorthodox players that really take these isolated engagements, like perhaps Scary or Millies that just died to the very first pick, an opportunity that will not be granted to them for this very first round. And it's just very unlucky. And on top of that, Dead also taking a lot of damage.
They're taking a ton, and Millie's already down. Rough start for the UNC'S, and the swing of catering Balk, or Pro Balk rather, is gonna get Dead yet another kill. As the ghost of Fast is flashed at the bottom of the screen. And Eli will die 4-on-4 with Exige saying, you know what? Why not swing it again? That's why not. Because Dead will kill you too. A man advantage now to the UNC'S after Mormon Battalion kind of just give away 2 kills pretty much on a silver platter. An over-aggression caught here by the attacking side. Very much ready for it. And honestly, Dead doing everything in his power it would look like to prevent himself from overheating and just running right in there. Because he's feeling himself for the time being. That's kind of what Mormon Battalion are hoping on. Someone to overextend it to bring this back to a 3-on-3.
It's those small mistakes, those missed swings that can just punish you for an entire round, couple of rounds, or in, like we saw last map, an entire series. But the problem now, though, is even though they do have office control, did answer back with 2 picks, they don't really have a great way onto the site. And again, just swinging something that you're not aware of, Scary finds another.
That has been 3 kills now this round for the UNC'S. All 3 of them just netted off of, like you said, angles the defense wasn't quite ready for. But Exer, they're not ready for him at the top of Spiral Stairs. And so he gets 2 and makes it even once again. With only 30 seconds to go, the attack now needs to pick up the pieces, and Sta has at least picked up the diffuser. So they have that to work with Dead still on Pro Balk. But Toaster and Exer in very important positions. Exer could come through from the hallway and play that double door very effectively if this plant starts to go down. So they might need to isolate Toaster on the site itself, but they spotted him. No kill quite yet, though. And now Exer rotates over to the bathroom instead of playing his impact position, but it doesn't matter because he's still finding impact out of his new spot. And Secretary might even be an ace for the Warden, but instead Toaster will swing wide, steal his party, but it's okay. Even though your party got pooped on and your ace got stolen, you still win a round, and I'm sure he's happy with that.
That was just a round that was a little bit frustrating. Specifically, I think the Exer 2-piece shouldn't have happened more than any of those other swings. You can really say that there was some idea of like, okay, Exige swinging out, trying to cover that. There's an idea behind that. The one player dying to bathroom to Scary, he simply was not aware of that position. He was a knock. You know, there's a lot of situations where there's a benefit of doubt. But I think, especially that late into the round, where not only do you have the man advantage, but on top of that, you have so much map control to allow a player like Exer to just completely slip through that, is a really bad warning sign. And honestly, if I'm the UNC'S, I'm glad that happened in round 1 rather than 1 round away, down 1 round when, you know, Mormon Battalion are up 6-5. So I think it's one of the situations where it's just a glaring problem that shouldn't have happened, but also it's relatively an easy one to fix on top of it.
Mormon Battalion, strong site setup here. And that's important to point out given this attacking composition. Normally Blitz not always indicative of a site rush, but the Glaz here is what I'm looking at, as well as the Lion to shut down the rotates back. Thatcher Thermite combo to make sure the wall gets opened at all, and pretty much you've brought as many unique operators as you can while still making sure the rush can actually happen, because there aren't defenders rotating back to the site immediately, and you're also able to get the wall open in the first place with that Thatcher Thermite combo. It looks like, though, that this may not be the best climate to walk into in terms of a rush, because you've got a solid amount of players still on that basement floor, and 1 or 2 right above them on the first floor, ready to rotate back whenever they need to. This seems to be at least a thought that the rush could come through, and it's taken quite a while for it to matriculate, or for it to... That's probably the right word. For it to come together. And so the UNC'S are just going to wait here or Mormon Battalion rather, going to wait here for the Uncs to try and make their play. And as the wall starts to get opened up, it looks like Sta has the shield out and is probably going to start to go for it. But the bandit trick will shut it down. And what do they do now, Goose?
It's round after round. Their entire win factor of this early round is getting that wall open, and in turn, the entire win factor was shut down by one bandit trick. Now, keep in mind, no nades, no EMPs, no vertical from above until the bandit trick went off. That was probably the easiest situation. The good thing, though, is they do find Xer on the road.
Oh!
But he's able to get one.
And he's somehow still not dead yet. He can still use the melees to his own advantage, fortunately for Sta. He won't throw away that situation, but what an outplay from Xer. Sprint away, use the terrain to your advantage, and turn back around on one player. Now lowered to 10 HP is Sta, because he's walking up on a crossfire. The worst enemy of a blitz, and that means he's just realized it. You can see him in real-time processing. That means 2 players are upstairs, which means I can maybe hit the site itself. But before he overheats, his teammates call him back and encourage him to try and help them with the roam clear. For now, roam cleared other than Babbler Eli, who's still around on that first floor towards main entrance, and they're not ready for him in the corner. Big kill for the Legion, and he's still keeping himself alive. The cutoff angle isn't going to cut him off, as he'll get back to the site just fine. And now a 2 versus 3 that favors the defense.
They're just not drones. 3 drones still left on the board. The fact that Eli was not only allowed to still be up on that first floor unknown, but in a position that is so obvious. Again, just a glaring red symbol translating into this execution.
Now they'll have to try and make it work. Sta into a good plant spot, but no case on him, and he's just been C4'd. The much bigger problem there, the latter of the two. And Cassie is sitting in the corner because, like you said, the drones were all gone. They hadn't been using them too much early, and they didn't have enough to use them late, so he can camp in the corner and get a kill next to the red car. 2-0 up for Mormon Battalion.
A very rough start, and this is where you get to a point where if you lose this next round, the Uncs are in a position where do they want to call their timeout to try and stop this from being a 5-1, 6-1 half, or do you just let this half that notoriously is not in your favor play out and save that timeout for translating on the favored side? It's a question that has haunted players and coaches throughout the 9, almost 10 years of Siege's existence. And again, it even haunts, us as casters, because there's really not a right answer. It really goes to just the complete factor of you have to shut down these problems. One is letting that drone economy go, but even ignoring that problem, that round, they just tried to go for a very simple one-sided rush and slash take onto the site on that wall, which I talked about before, again, was completely shut down by one easy factor, that being the bandit charge. Going into these next couple of attacking rounds, they really need to change it up, really need to bring a deeper bag and give themselves more and better opportunities.
Now Mormon Battalion on their last site in the rotation, at least presumably. Can't imagine we'll see a split level in this situation so far, given the success they had in the first 2. Going to piano and exposition. Solid site setup, and I like the pulse pick because of that verticality from downstairs. Oftentimes you'll see this site simplified to just, well, play the site up above. But in reality, it's kind of like storage and control on labs, another site where not only is the verticality upstairs enough to shut down a lot of plant opportunities, but the verticality from below can be quite good. So even though Cassie is starting off in Visa to try and get a hold on any roam clears that'll come from the top floor over, I like that idea to possibly C4 from down below the objective because of all the breakable floor underneath Piano and Expo. So even if you give up that verticality, you can still affect the site without having to sit on top of it. I like that thought process. And so far, the Uncs yet to really challenge its roam just yet. And the instant they try to, Scary shut down first. And Toaster with a big opener. They're actually going to try and go for a full roam clear, it looks like. C4 missed onto Zolaris, and now the push into the mirror window shut down right after. Only 1 kill for the attackers, and it's Sta only finding 1 kill after 3 of his teammates have died. Safe to say, he and Dad are going to have to do God's work to get back into this round. The flashbang in to try and get a rappel to go his way, and he wasn't ready for the player in the corner. Does get the headshot, but it just doesn't matter. Dead so far forward. Not sure how they let him get this far up, but eventually he too will fall. Every single attacker goes down in quick succession, and Mormon Battalion up 3-0.
It really comes down to a problem that the overarching red glaring problem for the Uncs is that they don't have info. Every time, whether it be a swing or they're trying to take a point of the map, it really does look like they're going into this position trying to take it away completely blind. And it really goes back to the fact that it could be their dwindling drone economy, and that is a problem. But also, there's a lot of situations where you, as an individual player, especially Scary on the Ash, right outside that bathroom balcony, should have been able to read that there was potentially a player. Just swung, not even entertaining that the idea that that mirror could have even been there. And it really goes back to the fact that, in theory, in these past couple of rounds, it doesn't look like the UNC'S have a great idea of not only what they want to do on the attack, but how they even want to approach it and what Mormon Battalion are doing on the defense. And this is why I was a little bit scared and questioned on why such a good map for both teams was able to slip through the bomb phase. And throughout the 4 maps that Mormon Battalion had played throughout the entire group stage, 3 of them are being played today.
Yeah. Again, back to the idea of very thin map pool, so to say, but that's not really getting exploited because the UNC'S kind of just banned out a couple of maps that they didn't really feel like going to. So, granted, I could see wanting to ban Lair. You know, maybe we don't want to play Lair because it's still so new and can be kind of tricky to figure out. Only seen it played once in Wildcard Restart between SSG and Makers, and that game honestly confused me more than I was before about how to play that map, and what idea I thought I had of how to play it kind of went out the window. But even still, Consulate, another map that both of these teams have played on before, and though the UNC'S have won it, I think we're really starting to see, like we had speculated in the pre-show, Mormon Battalion aware of their gaps in these defenses thanks to having to play a team as good as Makers on a map like this.
Yeah, and again, you know, the very first round, having a 4-2 man count, there's rounds where they have complete control. And this is even arching back to the previous 2 maps where the UNC'S continue to give away these man advantages, continue to give away the entry picks. This time around, that is exactly what they needed, is to get that entry pick. And Dead, out of all people, shutting down that Pachanka. So much utility also off the board with it.
Dead in his first kill since round 1 when he watched 2 people walk in front of his scope at this wall, at projector wall, at pro wall, is going to then again get 2 kills on the same site on the same wall doing the exact same thing. But this time it was even stupider because Eli tried to run out the wall entirely. And who but Exer to respond, who seems to be the only person other than 1 kill from Toaster who can kill anyone when they defend this bomb site. I said that they had noticed the gaps in their defenses, but clearly Mormon Battalion not picking up on the big problem they had last time they defended, which was don't just walk it dead and let him kill you. And still a minute to go, and an advantage now to the UNC'S after a couple mistakes are made by Mormon Battalion, and they are flailing to try and get that pick back. Exige dies for it. Good trade for Exer, though, to keep it close.
The problem here is Dead, he is completely essentially on an island, just waiting for his teammates to clear out Exer, playing in the exact same position he was last time. This time around, he's not going to be able to get those 2 picks, and Dead has completely no idea of who is to his left in the other bomb site. They need to focus on getting Exer, because right now, the win factor is all in his favor.
And this, the same exact position we saw in the 3 versus 2 last time, as Alaris is able to kill Toaster. The understanding of where the last defenders will be, playing so well into the favor of the UNC'S here, as Mormon Battalion change up basically nothing compared to the last time they put the attack in this position. And as a result, the UNC'S know exactly what they're walking into, unlike Mormon Battalion, who had the same exact 5-on-3 because of the same exact reasons this time. UNC'S adapting to what they saw last time, ready for exactly what they're going to see here. And then they just shut down Exer because you know exactly where he's going to be. Simple as 1, 2, 3. And now, down 3 rounds, you finally get on the board to make it just 2.
And like, as you said, that was essentially a mirrored defense and setup from Mormon Battalion, not only in what they had set up on the bomb site, but 2 players swinging that position. And again, it's a problem that has really haunted and shut down these defending teams on console. It doesn't matter what tier of siege. Whenever you have a defending team on consulate get over aggressive, overzealous, overswing in these positions, these angles that they shouldn't even be contesting, that's when you start to give these openings to the attack. And if you're the UNC'S, all you need is 1 more round. But if you can shut down these next 2 rounds, going into a bomb site that you've seen played almost exactly the same, this time around, XGS is going to be bringing out that bandit to shut down this wall, remove that win factor that has gotten so many opening picks for the UNC'S, finally changing it up. And this is exactly what they need to do. They need to continue to give the UNC'S something new every single round to deal with and continue to put them on the back foot.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb.
And they seem to want to run it back on this top floor. They don't want to run back the basement when they won the first time, or piano when they won the first time. Instead, opting to go back here, and they're understanding the problem. Pro wall keeps getting opened, and we keep dying to it. The only problem is that they died to someone else even earlier than they died to the dead on pro wall normally. As in the first 20 seconds of the round, Flaw's already taken down. That's Cassia, rather. Already dead. And yet another early advantage to the UNC'S on this bomb site attack. Last time around, worked out to the tune of a round win for them. If they can get a second attacking round here, safe to say they'll be in solid position moving into that defensive half. As a 4-2 half, pretty much the standard on this map. If anything, a 5-1 definitely possible, and 3-3 kind of looked at as a little bit subpar. So I would say 2 rounds here for the UNC'S is good. Get a bit ahead of myself, though.
If you see that ping, that drone going down below, identifying that there not only is vertical holes on that default plant, but also no one's playing there. This is a perfect opportunity, a perfect opening for the UNC'S to potentially get a quick plant down, and that's exactly what they're gearing up to do, relying on just a little bit more information. This bottom floor has been taken control of. Eli's also pushed out. Everything going into the favor of the UNC'S. They just simply need to get into that window.
And Stuh needs to try and drop down the skylight soon, because otherwise Scary's going to get caught isolated. Now Eli needs to try and back away, and he will be able to do just fine. Stuh not able to get his first kill of the round just yet. Smoke canister could possibly help out in getting further in, and Dead now trying to stick the plant, easily going to be able to do so thanks to that verticality from Millie's getting controlled, and a total switch up in terms of what the attack goes for. Gets them a bomb plant, hasn't got them around just yet though. As good as it is, it's still not over. XGS gets 1 kill back, but now, how on earth do you retake? You need to send somebody outside, and you also need to send players below to deal with the players downstairs, but they're starting to make it work one by one. Exer with a kill, traded back though by Zolaris. And with this plant still down, the verticality could easily shut down this defuse attempt. You are not on the UNC'S, my friend. You are not getting away with that ninja defuse, and Dead will close it this time around, not having as much personal success as he normally does on this bomb site, but it's just fine because he's got his team a second round.
As soon as console got its rework, the very first thing that not only pro players, but every single casual ranked player realized is that that default single window is very comfortable to plan in if you can flush it out. The problem is, after a week, everyone realized that if you hear maybe a blitz, if you hear a smoke go out, someone's going to plan in that position. Because of that, you would then see teams translate to a distraction playstyle, try to put some pressure onto that window, trick the defenders thinking that they trying to plant there, but then also planting all the way over behind that little, half wall by meeting on the other window right by pro wall. But that time around, not only did the UNC'S try to go for that distraction style gameplay, but they tried to draw all the attention to that yellow push, essentially tricking Mormon Battalion to thinking that they were going to do a yellow-centered push. And why that all happened, the bomb was going down from that ace. And on top of that, you couldn't even swing him because you had a blitz clear his way. Not go for the kill, but try to get that site control, completely cutting off, again, that win factor onto the bomb.
So now Mormon Battalion really not wanting to go back to that site. Instead, they'll go to the first floor, and Piano and Exy, the next one up in the priority. And it went really well, but the UNC'S also did kind of try to rush it just a little bit. So maybe they take their time a bit more here, and they could possibly go their way, try to gather all the control they know they could get, and maybe move in around the same time and have more of an awareness as to where Mormon Battalion will be, because they haven't been changing things up too much. And whenever a change is made to the defense, the UNC'S have been adapting to it perfectly. Like last round, they knew they were going to put more emphasis to defense on that projector wall, and so instead you just hit yellow and into the window. This time around, you know you're probably going to be walking into something similar, and when they have that advantage, the UNC'S have been definitely much better at adapting to what they're seeing on the other side, whether they're on defense, like last map when they were down 6-3 and won every defense in a row, or whether they're on attack and adapting just like they have been doing for the past 2 rounds and bringing this back to possibly making it 4-2.
A very more careful round in this opening half. Half the round now gone. A plethora of intel now gathered by these drones. A great idea of what this defensive extension upstairs looks like. And on top of that, they get an additional ping onto XGS. Eventually,
Oh,
they're
no.
able to deal with him. And that's the opening that they needed.
That rat play absolutely sniffed out by the attack. And that is a big advantage too. Good trade back from Eli, but that just gives away where Eli is. And he could possibly make them regret, or they could possibly make him regret showing face even if he got that trade back. But nothing quite yet in terms of response from the UNC'S. Rotation from Toaster being held. He'll have to drop the hatch, but the hatch might actually be reinforced. So that might not even be an option. All the while, the rest of the UNC'S not really doing anything, kind of waiting for Mormon Battalion to walk into them. But that's not quite what's happening. They were playing to die upstairs, and they just want to make sure they get their one if they're going to die there. Toaster ends up dying just there. It's only one player left on the second floor as the hit on the site itself starts to come through, but the spiral stairs player of Cassia is going to need to go huge. Eli still upstairs getting challenged now by Millies. He'll win that fight, and that's a big fight to win. With Exer still inside of the site as well, needs to make sure he's not getting flanked. Cassia needs to make sure he's not going to get flanked here. As it's play in from Closet, shut down immediately. Great headshot for Exer, and now he's pivoted on a dime, ready for the play in from Lobby, but it doesn't seem like he needs to be ready for it because from the other side it's dead. Trading it back, picking the diffuser back up, and now starting to try and stick the plant perhaps, but he has no vertical, and here comes Cassia finally making the play on the flank. It will be a 4-2 half after all. And Cassia, the one to secure it.
The UNC'S getting what not only they expected, but what they probably should have gotten. And they're going to go, that 2-4 is going to be received on their end. On the contrary, Mormon Battalion fixing their 3-3.5, putting them into a very comfortable 4-2. The problem now, though, for them is they have to attack Consulate. We've seen time and time again, it doesn't matter how good, whether it be your cohesion as a team, your coordination. The problem with Consulate is not only is it so big, it's so disconnected. If you lose just one pick on one side of the map, it's not as easy to regain the map control, get the trade back perhaps. Also, especially when you have such a defined defense playing off of each other like we saw Mormon Battalion did on their own. But for the very first round, the UNC'S going to be going not only down to this basement, but putting a lot more emphasis, as you can already see by that Mira over by CC, on just simply denying this back take.
And the offensive comp, not necessarily indicating a back take or a front take, mostly just player on the vert, maybe get the garage wall open, but you probably would have tried to get the garage wall open either way, just to get some kind of phantom pressure, even if it's just that. But would have to guess that it would be a front side take because of the Buck Ram and Thermite combo all being in one attacking composition. But still, Flaw's the only one who really showed up here. Cassia didn't have any EMPs alongside him and doesn't have any at all in the attacking composition save for Eli with just 2. But he's also bringing both the hard breach gadgets, so we might have been thinking he was going to get to use those EMPs and keep them to himself. So now you have 2 impact EMPs to chuck at a wall that's kited, and that can get kind of annoying just because of how many different spots a Kaid Claw could be in and still get the full wall. You could possibly throw 2 EMPs at totally different spots and not even get the Claw, and that's a bit of a problem. So nothing done quite yet for Mormon Battalion as they're still trying to work their way into the map itself, but XGS is actually into the yellow stairs. I think they may be pivoting this push just a little bit. Great adaptation though from Scary to open up new angles.
Yeah, I really love that we're seeing this adaptation from Mormon Battalion a minute into the round rather than with a minute remaining, realizing that their entire push and idea for that round was going to fail. And this is continuing that idea of an attack. They really need to give themselves as many avenues into the bomb site as possible, but on the contrary, giving them as many possibilities to win the round. taking away that factor of just only one factor being there, opening up this vertical, putting pressure on the backside. It really puts the Uncs in a position where they don't exactly know where this attack will be spearheading from.
And I like that play to sort of put the pressure on the backside, open up some angles, and maybe just make them think you were playing from behind there. I could see everyone, and I thought they were going to go for that backside take. So, of course, the Uncs are going to think that it was happening for real as well. That pushes everybody back to the site itself. And now, with a minute to go, the garage wall has been opened. Cassia still has the case outside it. But even still, this vert, the wall opened up as well, could possibly be huge, but Cassia takes a little bit of damage, but a great shot and it's scary to actually net the opening pick for the hard breach itself. Still waiting outside though, not quite wanting to overextend that case just yet.
Just trying to find an opening, even though the pick has gone to Mormon Battalion, they don't necessarily have a great idea of where they attack, but X are continuing to stab the dagger deeper into the heart of this defense.
Now the backside play finally going to come through. The only one on the defense to get a kill, now the only one left alive. Star shuts down Eli, and he'll have to do it to everybody else as well. That backside take isolated first, but Exer kills so many players and wastes so much time that the front side take is actually able to find so much success in and of itself. Mormon Battalion win their first attacking round.
Hey, one better last time they came to this map. And I think getting one more round one on the defense, now translating to getting one more round on the attack, as an overarching viewpoint, shows that Mormon Battalion took that loss, took that game day rep from Makers to its fullest potential. And having a player, the head honcho like XGS, he's not going to waste that homework potential. He's not going to waste that strat reviewing potential. And all the way back, I said it was a great idea of taking them to one of Maker's best maps because you can become a better team. And on this last map, it really comes down to two factors of whether it's Mormon Battalion looking like the better team, or it's really starting to feel like the Uncs are starting to run out of a little bit of gas.
Just a little bit. Maybe they're losing some steam. Maybe they feel like they're not quite as confident in this play as they were just 1 or 2 maps ago, really, and that could definitely be it. I mean, you win that map 1 on a map that you hadn't really played on game day yet, you go into a map that on paper looks even better for you, and you lose it, and then now you're going into a map that on paper looks maybe the best for you. You're playing against the team who just got smoked, and now Scary, even his spawn peak, his early plays, exactly what's been working so consistently for the Uncs all day long, even those are going wrong. What isn't going wrong for the defense at the moment?
I understand the idea of trying to continue to take those aggressive takes, not only as a player, because if you need Scary taking those takes, you need Scary putting himself out there, trying to shut down those entry picks. But on the contrary, Mormon Battalion are just absolutely locked in. They've ironed out every single mistake in their entire attack. And those that one-off aggressive spawn peaks, I don't necessarily think they're going to work.
Well, clearly they aren't. They've been working all day long. And that the first time I can remember one of them just straight up not working. Case kind of abandoned in an odd spot. And the notable player here is Millie. He's trying to walk forward. And the player downstairs, Cassia, almost not even capitalized on, trying to play up the vertical. But instead, that's your Ying down in front of the main door, and that's one of those problems we've talked about a little bit with this team. I know you've mentioned it, where some of these early picks, they're just giving people away, and they're not close enough to one another in the early round to trade anything out. And so some aggression goes untraded consistently, even though you had that early pick. It gets traded back out immediately by Millies, who's just going to work his way back upstairs and know that he is so happy that they're not having to play from a disadvantage anymore.
The problem now that's propped up for Mormon Battalion is, having that attacking utility like the Flores drones that is meant to simply clear this defender utility, clear a way into the bomb site, has been shut down. And on top of that, you still have that vending shield. Zolaris gets another one, and just not a whole lot of answers coming out from Mormon Battalion.
That's the vending player gone as well. Nobody in vending, nobody in never mind. No, that's the vending player is not gone. I thought that the defender died for a second. In fact, the vending player is still there. Thank you, third person, for making it evidently clear that he is. And Zolaris about to die to his own Goyo canister. Almost got high off his own supply for a second, left at 2 HP, and XGS is going to shut down the vending player, eventually going to die. A new Goyo going to get popped, so it can't get popped later. They can eventually open up a default plant there. Dead still in the corner, though. He's surely going to get pre-fired. He's surely going to get killed. It's XGS with 2, walking his way forward and taking control. Now they can surely start to get the default plant down, but because of that Goyo, they still can't quite do it yet. The overextension finally comes through! XGS with a huge play, and the Capital shuts everybody down. 6-2 advantage for Mormon Battalion.
Oh my god. Talk about a mood killer. The UNC'S finally having some sort of success, having that opening pick go their way, climbing back, putting themselves in a very comfortable position, and then out of all players, XGS with a huge 3-piece back to back to back like he's at Bojangles. That's not what you expect. And I've talked about this in the pre-show, that Mormon Battalion are like a triple-headed dragon. As soon as you cut down a player like Exer, you're going to have another one propped up. And now, with a player like Scary continuing to be punished in these early rounds, there's not another player stepping in his place.
And yeah, you look at the scoreboard. Zolaris 6-6, Dead 6-6, Stuh 6-7. Those are your top performers. You only have to look at one of them on the side of Mormon Battalion, and you've got more than half the kills of everybody I just listed combined. So, you know, it's safe to say that Exer, having as good a game as he is kind of getting in the way of the UNC's game plan, perhaps. And that was the other player we wanted to highlight in the pre-show, but Andrew, that battery is a fraud and wouldn't let us use 2-player highlights. But anyways, we wanted to highlight him too, because he's also been 13-3 on his entries, a good kind of contrast to Scary, how well he's been doing. Exer, smaller sample size, but still as efficient on a grand scale over his averages. And he's showing up today, right? Big sample size, he can do it when you need him to do it time and time again. Scary hasn't been able to do it so far this map, and he even died really early on last round. The first thing to go wrong was Scary dying on a presumed spawn peek attempt. And that's a big problem, that head-to-head that we were emphasizing so much, leaning heavier and heavier in favor of Exer, and now starting to lean heavier and heavier in favor of Mormon Battalion, but he's back on Vigil this round, trying to prove to everybody that he can still step up.
He is the player that needs to step up. Obviously, you have players like Dead, like Zeros. They're in that kill department, but they're not doing what Scary does best, which is shutting down and winning those entry engagements. And that's exactly what they need. Whether it be Scary or another player that can fill that role, they simply need to start winning these winning engagements. They need to shut down these problem players like Exer, who is now on the blitz. Mormon Battalion, they are gearing up for that rush. They want to shut this down this round right here. They're trying to do exactly what the UNC'S did on attack, but this time successfully.
Important stipulation as well. They want to win, which is not what the UNC'S did when they tried it. The blitz added this time as well. Extra emphasis on just trying to put the full brute force behind that rush. The last time that we saw this kind of attack come through, it was Alliance trying to make sure the rotates back were prohibited. This time, though, they just want that push itself to have the full impact. You can look at them and rotate back to site from anywhere that you want. It's still going to be just as hard to try and make a play. XG just planting right now. He lost about half his HP, and then whoever was shooting at him stopped. Curious decision, because as soon as he gets the plant down, they continue. It's as if on cue, they let him get it down and then kill him right after. Midleys gets another kill for the defense, leaving them in a 2 versus 4. But this time around, with the plant down where it is, and Cassia and Toaster still outside, one of whom is on glass with no smokes left, but still, it could be a massive impact here. Scary from behind, trying to make the play, but he can't do anything. Cassia and Toaster with 1 each, and they're still running around outside. What are you doing out there? That's not where you're supposed to be at all. You give him wall hacks in the 2 versus 4. Of course they're going to make it work, and Mormon Battalion, from not winning a single attack, don't lose a single attack against the UNC'S and secure their place in the top 4 of Xenon Gaming Series Season 7.
I talked about the game day reps, and a lot of T3 and T4 teams undervalue those game day reps. If they see a team like Makers, they'd rather go to a map that should favor them, that gives them a chance to win. They just want the points. They want to put themselves in a very comfortable position. But Mormon Battalion taking that risk in the long run leaded to success in this best of 3 scenario that a lot of people didn't have them when. I wouldn't necessarily say they were the underdogs, but it was more of an even matchup than a lot of people did expect. And I think the adaptation that we not only seen from XGS, the game we've seen from XGS, games where XGS can go positive, they win. It's just simple as that. It's like JJ going positive. It's kind of like an unstoppable force because you have everyone shooting at their highest potential. All the way back in the pre-show, I talked about one player. If you could shut down Scary, there's not a lot of other players that really propped up. And continuing into this best of 3, that was the exact problem that eventually led to their downfall.
You could say that, and I think XGS going positive, a fair note to make. We're actually going to get a conversation with XGS. I'm going to get to interview him. Not quite ready yet, it would seem, as I'd imagine they would have thrown me to it. As I said that, they didn't tell me if it was ready or not, so I was just going on a whim and hoping that it would be, perhaps. As I try to get my last-minute homework done and figure out what I'm going to ask him about, because they didn't tell me I was doing this interview until 1 round before the map ended. Anyways, well, full best of 3 already down, and it felt like at some point in the halfway point in overtime on map 2, the momentum just kind of shifted. UNC'S definitely had the upper hand in map number 1, and though Mormon Battalion looked better through most of map number 2, eventually that comeback for the UNC'S showed them that they're not quite out of it just yet. But I think 1 or 2 of those losses in OT just took the wind out of their sails, and it felt like they just didn't come back. Consulate, not their map, and a map we know they can succeed on as well, as they had won it previously through the season. That's a big point to make, because it's not like it's just a rough map for them. They let it through for a reason, and they've won it before. So you have to just imagine maybe they just lost the momentum. They still newer, maybe not, used to playing those big best of 3s, and they had just ran out of steam by the end of it, like you had suggested.
Yeah. And I think, oh, we're gonna go to the interview.
Thanks for telling me that right after I threw it, by the way, Stan. I love you. Speaking of people I love, what's up, XGS? How you feeling?
I'm good. How are you? That was sucked.
I'm doing all right. Well, we can start talking off first about the map where you guys really did suck on Skyscraper. So you guys picked into Sky, and then you lost it. So the logic behind picking into Skyscraper, do you want to talk about what it was, or do you just want to talk about what went wrong? Yeah, talk about whatever you want on that map, really. It's just...
Strategy behind it was why not. That's about it. I mean, there wasn't... It's a fun map. Shane sucks on it, so we wanted to show how bad he was. And then we wanted to play 3 maps, so we were like, best case scenario, we lose this map, and then we can play 3 maps. So that's fun. So we did that.
Wow.
But no, they banned Lair. I was pissed. I wanted to play Lair.
Yeah, we want to see Lair. I want to see Lair at least.
That was the strategy. But yeah, I mean, besides that, I mean, our attacks weren't bad at the beginning for it, but then when we got into the execute stage, we all got lost, and it was just like, hey, I'm gonna go plant the bomb, and then the other guy goes, hey, I'm in doing nothing. So yeah, like we didn't have any proper coverage, and it was kind of troll, but it was fun. I mean, we lost. We love these guys. Like the UNC'S are good. They're good players, but I mean,
yeah, we could tell.
Mormon Battalion's better.
With the L chat. We could tell with the L chat that you guys like them quite a lot.
They're good friends of ours. I mean, everything we ever said, like that's just banter. That's for fun.
Yeah,
nothing, no hard feelings with any of it.
Well, yeah, so you make it out of that map 1, and I guess we could have asked, how did you guys bounce back? But clearly you guys had prepared mentally for the loss before you even ended up losing. So I guess you get into Bank, and I mean, they pick Bank into you guys. Oh, first though, I want to ask generally thoughts about the ban phase. I noticed that you guys only banned maps that they had played before. Was that intentional, or did you just so happen to not like those maps?
Yeah, no, they're good at 2 maps. That's it. I've told this to Zolaris so many times. If anybody bans those 2 maps against those guys, they lose. Like that's that. I mean, if they got defense first on Skyscraper or something, apparently they can win it. Yeah. So that's good for them.
Yeah.
But that's how Sky works, and if you lose it in a best of 3, so be it. I mean, we tried and we lost, but going to Bank, we choked a little bit because we had that lead. I'm not gonna lie, I was chalked because I couldn't shoot back and I was sucking ass. Like my last words in the last round when it was a 5v1 was, "Please let me kill this guy. I need confidence for map 3." So I went and swung him. So, but team's great. Everybody did well, and can't be like Consulate's a great map, and it's always gonna be a good map for us. So if it goes to the decider, we were like, we won.
And I mean, yeah, it's a map they had won before. You guys lost it to Makers. Did that game against Makers teach you guys more about gaps you had on the map, or did you just think you were a really good cons team, and that's just you're playing against the team who should probably be in Pro League, and we just kind of got smoked that day?
In all honesty, they're a great team. We knew their cons is basically their best map, in my opinion. I like my cons, and I wanted to see how it went up against them. Like, we understood that they're a better team. I did want to win, but I wanted it to be more of a learning experience, because playing them on their best map, and a map that we're confident on, again, nobody's gonna, you want to win again, but taking something out of it, expecting that, hey, it's okay if we lose, might as well do it on a map that we could learn something from somebody.
I love to see that. And you were talking about your confidence in your own skill. You turned up in one of those last rounds, man. I mean, you had that 4K on Capital where you just kind of walked at everybody and smoked them. How was that for you, being able to, like, you know, after a slower day than usual, what, like, did you feel the confidence? Did you just kind of overheat in that moment, or was it all just calculated and you just knew you were better than those guys?
Anytime I stop talking and I just start focusing on shooting, I can actually shoot back. But like, I get in my own head sometimes when I'm IGLing. I'm too focused of like what's going on with the entire team that I forget to think about what I'm doing myself, and I find myself just sitting in a corner and I'm not reacting. I'm not playing as aggressive when I'm talking. Like, for example, when I was mute over by the chalkboard, like I'm just yapping, and I just like two people like just walk by me, and I'm just not paying attention. So when I stop talking, I can shoot back, and that was one of those rounds that Shane started talking for a second, and I just shut up, and they said somebody was soda, so I went and swung it.
Nice plays all around. And so you guys now make your way to the semifinals with a pretty new team, all things considered. Was this kind of a height that you guys expected to reach, or is this kind of just, you're just going along, making it up as you go, and happy to get to wherever you can make it to? I
mean, I've built 3-4 teams, and I know every single team that I've built is more capable than being a top 4 T3 team. I know that. I got players around me that are willing to learn. They can shoot back. Each and every one of the players that we're playing with right now, Cassia, Exer, Eli Toaster, they're great players. What can I say? When you have great players around you, you're able to make things work. If everybody's having a good time and wanting to learn off of each other, you will win. If everybody's locked. I mean, there's plenty of times where we're trolling too much and we'll lose, but all of us want to have the recognition of being good players. As much as we were known for wanted goons, for just trolling and having fun, we want to be good comp players. And we're going to continue to show that no matter where we're at, we're going to be on top. And we're going to.
Awesome. I love to see that. So after that statement of your own, is there anything else that you want to say? You have the floor for any shout outs, any final comments, and anything to anybody who may not consider you a top tier comp player, may think that you're still just a little bit of a troller. I'll certainly prove them wrong tonight.
It's honestly, if somebody thinks I suck or I'm too much of a troll, good for them. I know what I am. I know I'm good. Shout out to my friends because they believe in me, and that's what matters. And shout out my mom. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. And yeah, I mean, we're going to keep winning. But I won't be here. So if we lose, it's not my fault.
Okay. Perfect. The perfect plan. If you lose, it's not my fault. Exactly. It's like after a number, you get 1 kill and everybody else died before you, and you're just like, well, I got mine. So, oh well, you got yours. You got your team to the semis.
Exactly. It was.
I like that. I like that. Anyways, have a good night, man. Pleasure to talk to you as always, and congratulations on getting the semifinals. Even though you won't be able to play next time, well,
is what it is.
Hopefully the team will be able to do well in your absence.
I hope so, but thank you guys again.
All right, Goose, I want to talk to you about a hypothesis that you had. I know you're also friendly with XGS, but the thing that you said about we're playing cons into makers for a learning experience. Totally honest, I heard you say that, and I was like, I don't think anyone would ever think that way. And then it turned out to be true. So you have the floor to gas yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, I think especially they played it right after E3. Keep in mind, group stage was right after E3. So going into a map that Makers, not only, I'm pretty sure they won it against a LATAM team. So going into it, you knew you weren't going to win. In all honesty, I think especially if we're looking at XGS, he knew that there wasn't a very good chance for him to win. And even going to this, I didn't expect it into a playoff match, rather. But I think he gives it time. And I think that's the problem with Amateur Siege, especially teams. We saw with Phantom Legion and BGS, they lost one playoff game. That was the only game they won in the entire event, and they blew up. And if you give teams time to grow, whether it be throughout an entire couple of months, entire series, we've seen it with Fluffy Aimers, the Valkyries, Roshes previously. If you give these players and these teams time to develop and learn how each other play, in the long run, you'll see a continued success.
And that's exactly what we've seen here for Mormon Battalion. XGS was saying himself he's built plenty of teams, but maybe this one, the one that'll stick around, not just to show the world that they can compete, but also that they can be great comp players while doing so, not having to goon the whole way to get to the playoffs. But they've made it all the way to the semifinals, and well, we'll see how they do. Well, that's going to be on Saturday that the semis will start, but we've still got 3 more quarterfinals to get to. It's going to be a little bit of a break, and then right after we're back, 2 new casters to bring you through 2 new teams playing in 1 new quarterfinal right after this.